why are you atheist and not agnostic? Well, it depends. I use those terms within a conversation. All of us are agnostic, first off. I do get bothered by the assertion that atheists, agnostic atheists, are agnostic, but agnostic theists are not. None of us know for 100%. Okay. I say that I'm an atheist. That's sort of a colloquial term. And if we get into a discussion about atheism, agnosticism, I'll clarify that. I think it's unlikely that there's a deity. I think it's highly unlikely, but I can't prove 100%, and you can't prove 100% for a God either. So it becomes a question of probabilities. And on probabilities, theists are on the side that there probably is, and I'm on the side that there probably isn't. Of course, we would both probably, put ourselves in the 1% and the 99%. You know how people do. They won't concede. When I give people a 1 to 99 scale, they will never concede 99. It's always 99.999. It's like, okay, come on. Sorry, but atheists just can't answer anything. How sad, how sad. I mean, seriously, think about what you're saying there. You're asserting that an individual, I mean, I'm a retired pharmacist, okay? I have a certain amount of education, nothing special. But, I can say stuff, I can assert stuff. So why would you say that? That is a foolish statement. I don't know if it's like to be cruel, to be mean. If you honestly believe that, then boy, you better have a good justification for it. I can tell you right off you're incorrect. So I would hope that you would want to learn why you're incorrect and not say things that make you look foolish or cruel or mean. So can't answer anything. And we all don't know stuff, right? We don't know how the universe started. Simple one. If you don't know, you don't make stuff up. Why would you make stuff up? So, in that sense, atheists are at least, well, atheism is just about the God question, but someone who doesn't know something either can then go investigate, can go learn, possibly. You go investigate, ask somebody who has an education in the field of the question, and you find out maybe the information is available, maybe it's something humans haven't figured out yet, in which case you just stick with the I don't know position. To go to a made up explanation, like I don't mean made up as in fantasy, but made up as in it has been asserted someplace by somebody, but it's no more than assertion. That is unreasonable. That implies something else is going on. You're believing things because you want to believe it, or someone told you who's trusted, or something like that. But you're inaccurate. So in that case, you have a false belief, is what I call it. So we have words for true belief. We just call it belief. We don't have a term per se for false belief. Similarly, we have the word knowledge, which is justified true belief, right? So if something's true and you know it and you're justified in know it and believing it, then it's knowledge. If you are justified in believing something because, for example, someone taught you that, but it turns out that that thing is false, then you don't have knowledge. You have information. Knowledge is a higher category. Let's see. How is atheism beneficial to people? Because you understand reality better. That seems like such an obvious answer to me. If you're going to solve any problem, wouldn't you want to have the most accurate information possible? It just seems like such a low common sense bar that you're going to better be able to resolve any problem to the degree that we can solve problems, particular problems, by having accurate information. So why is it beneficial to believe something incorrect? Why is it more beneficial to believe something that is factually untrue than factually true? It's not. It just plain isn't. And what's worse than that, I think, is to maintain false beliefs across generations. We are 21st century here, right? We know things we didn't used to know. So anybody who has access to modern knowledge and then makes claims and life decisions based on older knowledge that has been since learned to be false, again, you're believing things for other reasons, like it's intuitive to you, or you're suspicious. You don't trust, you don't trust the government. You don't trust teachers, whatever. Like evolution. Don't get me started on evolution. Evolution is an interesting thing to me because it's such a fascinating field because we know so much about it now. We understand evolution from so many different angles, right? We understand it from fossils. We understand it from molecular biology. We understand it from, is it homology, common bones, and how they show up in different species, similarities in structure and stuff. And yet, many Christians disbelieve in evolution because it contradicts. Well, it doesn't exactly contradict the Bible because the Bible says essentially nothing about evolution. There was absolutely no concept of that back in their own time. But it takes away the necessity for a creator. You lose that explanation completely once you know what it is. It's like you drop the Thor explanation once you know where thunder comes from. So I haven't had a strong evolution argument with somebody yet, and it's going to be an argument because I really, in a way, I'm not that interested in going round and round with someone who doesn't believe something that is blatantly true. It's like, why would I want to discuss or debate flat Earth, right? There's a point in time where you just move on and try to, I don't want to say ignore these people because so many people disbelieve it, but you stop going around. You don't debate this anymore, right? I used to follow many people who were paleontologists and geologists and this types of things, and they've spent their entire careers, 30 years, trying to convince people that evolution is true on the Christian side, only to fail for 30 years. All power to the people who are willing to do that, because we need some of that. I don't have the patience for it because, and I'm not an anthropologist, so I don't have the fine knowledge either. But at some point, we have to minimize the interactions with people on that subject and just move on. I want future generations. I want to interact with future generations who don't know about evolution because here we have to be 18, so you'll be old enough to have been exposed to it, but maybe don't understand it as well and would like a little information, like to understand it better. Those conversations are fascinating. But to debate somebody on things we know are true, to get into a debate with someone that says, where are the transitional fossils? At some point in time, and I think it's 10 years ago, at least. We need to move on and stop essentially doing what they want us to do, which is either to confuse the issue or saying that, yeah, we should put it in schools because let the kids decide. No, we're not going to let the kids decide what is false. We're not going to let the kids decide if a circle has corners. At some point, we just need to maybe pay some attention into the psychology of why people maintain these absurd beliefs. But we need to move on, and I'm kind of a fan of the moving on. So, having said that, I'm sure I'll have conversations with why do you believe in that part of evolution is true, and they'll say stuff like, well, it's on the internet, and blah, blah, blah. And I'll do what I can. As long as, I'll pretty much talk to anybody as long as they're willing to have an honest conversation, which is we listen, we talk, we listen, we talk, and not jibber jabber and that gift gallop, where people will just like talk and give out like 6 subjects in 3 sentences, and then when you try to stop that and get back to the foundational point that they make, they come at you and they say, well, let me answer, you're not letting me answer. And then you give into that once, and then it's like talk again, 5 more points. That's when I may block you. Speaking of which, there was a guy who was on here about 2 weeks ago now. It's been a while, and I want to give him a little credit, as well as scold him a little bit. We had a discussion on morality, objective versus subjective, and there was a clip on it I put up. He got mad about a piece of it. He didn't like. I had blocked him, and he thought that the way I had put it on, that I had posted the thing, implied that I had blocked him the whole conversation. And I honestly don't recall. I think what I did is I had blocked him, and then I posted the conversation after that. But to be nice, I just deleted the video. It just wasn't worth it. But what I wanted to say to him was the reason I blocked him to a large degree was because he did that overtalk thing I just described, where it was the gish gallop, and that's not going to happen here. Okay, on this channel. For the most part, if you do that to me, I'm just gonna stop the conversation. I'm not here for angry debates. I don't want to debate, I want to discuss. I want us to understand each other, I want us to listen to each other. Okay. My big thing is foundational statements. If you make a foundational statement that's false, we're gonna stop and talk about that. Right? And then we're gonna work on whether we can get that foundation to be true, and then we'll move forward. You lay down a false foundation and then continue on it, there's no point in the conversation. So that was a piece of it. So on the morality thing, without getting deep about it, he was for objective and I was for subjective. And at one point he got really, I don't want to say angry, it's almost the wrong word. He did get angry, but he got really bothered that I was saying that there's no such thing as objective reality. And he was saying, oh my God, this is terrible. You have to admit that that's just your opinion. And because the thing was getting angry, I blocked him. And I thought about it the next day. And he actually was right that it was my opinion, because I'm very much a person who goes on consensus. If I don't know something, I will trust the consensus of those educated in the field. That's obviously where a lot of my, I don't want to call it knowledge, but I don't know how quantum physics works, so I have to take the word of the experts. So I looked up, what is the consensus in philosophy of objective versus subjective? There is no consensus. I was surprised to find. So bad on me, first off, for not knowing that. I mean, I don't know everything, and you'll figure that out as you watch me. I know some stuff, but I don't know everything, and I try to have my logic as strong as possible. But I'm always open to be challenged. But yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know that there was no consensus. So the fact that I am currently holding a position that there's objective, that there is, sorry, the fact that I'm currently holding a position that morality is subjective completely is my position. And I am currently convinced of that. However, I am willing to change if you can convince me otherwise. So I will rework my language on that particular issue, and rather than just use the strong assertion of there is no objective morality, saying it is my position that morality is subjective. However, I can almost guarantee, I don't know. At some point, I will find him again, because I blocked him, and I got to find him, and see if I can let him back in, and maybe we can continue that discussion. And as long as he's not doing one of those talk stopping techniques, then we will have a discussion. Otherwise, he will stay blocked. But I'm going to assume that. Well, I don't have to assume, because he made it quite clear that he was 100% convinced that there was an objective. So I still have to go through the tape. I'm backed up on my tapes now, and see if he would acknowledge the same thing, that there is no consensus. So he can believe in objective morality. I can believe that there's subjective morality, and therein lies an interesting conversation about trying to not necessarily convince, but explain to each other why we hold the positions we do. All right. Hey, thank you so much. I'm willing to be called out. So if I make a mistake, I do my best to admit it, because number one, I don't want to be wrong. I want to be corrected if I'm wrong. Of course, the person who corrects me could be wrong also. But let's try to be a little more humble about it on all sides. All right. It makes them so much easier to manipulate over the years, and sadly, it often lasts into adulthood. Yeah. People they tend to get more conservative as they age, especially at the generational points, like having kids, getting married, and having to protect your own household and your own income and stuff. People get more protective of their own interests. But I like the idea of being open, being tolerant of others that we don't know much about, because being intolerant means we usually don't get the opportunity to interact with them and learn about them. And it's very, very easy, especially if you're in a group that has any sort of discriminatory tendencies, to think you know bad things about people that are probably not true. So, yeah. And this is aside from factual things that are true and false. Atheism doesn't require critical thinking, just lack of belief. Well, let's see. Lack of belief it doesn't come out of nowhere. This is from Sam? Yeah, this is from Sam. I mean, you're right in the sense that atheism is just lack of belief in God, but it's not like we choose not to believe. And it's not like it just sort of pops into my head like a random thought, and it's like, I'm going to pretend to disbelieve. We come to disbelieve for a reason. Things don't make sense. For me, there was a lot of looking at the apologetics early on. After I read the Bible, I started reading the apologists books and just finding, oh my gosh, fallacies and assertions all over the place. And I started trying to read like the ones that were recommended, and it was so hard because when I would read, and then I read usually digitally on iBooks and stuff like that, and I'll stop and I'll highlight and I'll put little notes, and it was taking me forever to get through these things because I'd be stopping like every couple of paragraphs. Well, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's just a complete assertion that has no basis. And that's why I don't read apologist books anymore. I've got one more I'm trying to finish, and it's taking me months. So you're wrong that it doesn't require critical thinking. It does take critical thinking. You know. Now, there's also something called intuitive thinking, and the people that think more based on intuition are the people that have more false beliefs, because our intuitions are not 100%. They're like good enough to keep us alive, survival wise, but it's really easy to intuit something, and if it's not true, to prefer to stick with that explanation. There's something called Thinking Fast and Slow, which is a book by a Nobel Prize winner, Daniel Kahneman, and he talks about this. Others have talked about this too. There's when you're presented with new information, is this thing true? Whatever this information is, your first instinct is you get a gut impression, right? That's the instinctual thinking, and then the type 2. That's called type 1 thinking. It's the quick, intuitive, if you want to call it common sense, but as you start to think about the thing, you can override that. That can get overturned. Oh, it kind of looks like that, but I see now that it's not that way. So your intuition can often be wrong, and that's harder to do. It takes more work and more effort to stop and think about it. You burn more calories, if nothing else, to stop and think. So it does take critical thinking to lack belief. Having said that, there's also some people have a higher propensity to believe desirable things, and other people are okay with believing something even if it's undesirable. So there are some atheists that are more on the I'm more interested in what's true than what I would like to be true. Let's see. Oh, thank you for the follow. Someone just followed. Let's see. Who's in here that I could... I'll throw some invites out. I see a lot of people in here now. Just throw a couple random ones out there. I wish I could explain more. The comments are the wrong medium. Yeah. Come up here and let's have a conversation. You're right. We need more words than a one line of comments. If you're an atheist, how can we make advancements in knowledge? Okay, I'm not quite sure what you said. Let me read the whole sentence, but the grammar is off. If you're an atheist, how can you make acknowledgments in knowledge? Oh, without divine revelation to profit. Well, if you're interested in knowing what is true, which is to say that you're interested in gaining knowledge, right? Justified true belief. So something has to be true to be knowledge. You're interested in learning what is true. It doesn't have to come from prophets and revelation. It has to just be true, and then you have to have some reason to believe it, whether that be a well-educated person in that particular field. Obviously you've been educated that that knowledge has to go through a profit filter or a religious filter, and it's just not true. So I don't really know how to say it much better than that. Advancements in knowledge. I mean, look at the advancements in scientific knowledge. I mean, we've gone from thinking that fevers came from demons to being able to do heart transplants in medicine by understanding very precisely how the body works and how diseases work and things like this, and developing drugs to treat diseases. This doesn't come from an external source. It comes from us putting funding together for research and then learning and then building on every little bit of knowledge. We didn't discover what oxygen was until the mid 1800s. We're kind of like that young, and before that, for 1,000, 2,000 years, we were taught that we thought that things came from the gods. I mean, the Quran is written in 692, I want to say, if I got that right. And again, the mid 1800s, before we really started to gain some steam and learning chemistry and electromagnetism and things like that. So you don't go to a book like that to learn something today. I mean, it was a valid set of ideas in that year. But as soon as knowledge goes forward beyond that, you don't look at that as a source anymore. You shouldn't look at that as a source anymore. All right, let me see if there's someone who wants to come up. So let's.
Hello.
Hey, sir. How you doing? Welcome.
I'm well. I was talking in your comments with a person named Jacob Gordon. Now, he raised a really good point, and I myself am atheist. And I wanted to answer him. So the reason I came up was because it really was too much to type.
Yeah, fair enough.
So his question, which I said was really valid, was why do atheists feel a need to spread it? Why would you hinder someone else's belief? Yeah. And on its face, that's a very valid point.
Mm-hmm.
The fact remains is that everyone has beliefs. Mm-hmm. Everyone in a very early age is encultured and they inherit certain things from the people around them. And, you basically believe a lot of things. You believe the gravity will cause you to fall and hurt yourself. You believe in a lot of things. And that includes religious beliefs as you age. But also what's true about belief is throughout your whole life, you have experiences, you reflect on things you've previously held and weigh them against your experience. Some you modify, some you examine and hold deeper, and some you discard. Everybody goes through this process. This is normal. Mm-hmm. And so for most atheists, and I came to atheism young, I was still, I think in 6th grade. I just came to a point where it was the same process as abandoning the tooth fairy and the Santa Claus, which I'm sure you've heard before from atheists. It's the same process, recognizing that this has been fables and that you really don't operate on that level. You don't believe in spirits. I certainly don't believe in spirits. I don't believe in afterlife. I just don't. And I operate on that way on a very deep level. And I would not challenge someone else's beliefs, recognizing that everybody goes through that unique process for themselves. But here's the problem. It's the messianic religions. They're very, very tied into politics over ages. They're very, very aggressive on proselytizing and spreading. They've done a lot of harm throughout the ages. If you look, right up into the present day, but going way back, there's been conquering, there's been enslavement, there's been cruelty, there's this whole belief of a kind of Armageddon coming. That it's a death cult, and it's very frightening when it infringes on other parts of life beyond your personal interior beliefs. And so a lot of atheists feel an obligation to address the political realities of the messianic religions that do this all to some extent. Christianity can arguably be the worst one. So then you'll find atheists, in some of them famous, making a political stand against some of the abuses of those religions. So that's when you will see the arguments. I think that I hope you recognize atheists are some of the most outcast groups as far as religious belief is concerned.
Well, pretty much by definition, right? If you're, I mean, right now in the U.S., atheists are about 7%, somewhere in there.
But
so, yeah,
there's, I think, a dozen or so states where it's illegal to hold public office.
Yeah,
if you're an atheist.
Yeah.
Now that's been challenged in courts, and I'm not sure it's enforced anywhere. But those laws are still on the books. And
it goes beyond that because you're right. There are a few left. I don't know how many there are, but there's also.
I think it's 13, but I might not be right about the number. It's a lot.
But there's more than that where it it won't happen because the bias is so high.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
And certainly for something all the way up to a president, never, is not correct. Right now, you won't get elected if you say you're an atheist. That makes you unelectable at a general election. I don't think we have an out atheist at the state congressional level yet, do we? I'm not sure about that.
We have had state, but they're very rare.
Yeah, state, yes, but not federal.
No, not federal that I know of.
Yeah.
So, Jacob Gordon, I hope this explains the reason you see atheists getting in these arguments. I chose to come up here because this gentleman I've seen before, and he doesn't get aggressively nasty in the TikTok debate sense with people. I presume you feel a need to make yourself a presence because of some of the things I've talked about, and maybe for other reasons as well.
Yeah. I mean, I have two basic reasons. One is what you stated, is that it's not the belief per se, but it's the imposition based on those beliefs onto other people. And then two is the truth factor. It really bothers me when people try to spread wrong information, especially to kids, like the age of the earth. I'm a kind of a science person and things like that. So, creation instead of evolution, these things are just untrue. And I don't want to see a younger generation, especially let alone current generation, because if we don't, well, that's majority. But if we don't have enough trust in science, then that hurts our society because then we don't get as much funding in science, right? And Congress funds this stuff. Mm-hmm. So you don't trust the universities, you don't trust the scientific process methodology over a religious book. We are not going to be the greatest country on the planet for,
I see Jacob in the comments. Jacob, have I made anything clearer for you?
I see a J something. I'm not sure if this is Jacob. Maybe it is. Hi, is this Jacob or not? Oops.
That's him. That's made that comment about.
All right.
You may want to invite him up. He seems reasonable.
I did. That's what that was. That's what that just was. I invited him up. He came in and then just took himself out. Oh, I'm gonna
anyway,
do it again. I think you made a mistake.
I know I kind of expounded for a while, but that's what I wanted to do.
Let's try this again, Jacob.
Sorry, somehow it put me in somebody else's live.
Okay.
Well,
Does that
the,
make
the first
sense?
thing I wanted the first thing I wanted to say is, like, the guy was just mentioning all these acclaimed horrific things that people's faith causes them to do, but I mean, the most destructive empire, the most destructive leader in the world, in a number of instances, was atheist. For instance, Mao.
Okay. Well, okay, I can handle that one if you want. It's kind of a different point, but there's a difference, because this is a very common misunderstanding, and it is spread exactly for the reason that you're doing it. It's misinformation, no, misunderstanding. I'll stick with that word. People like Mao, Stalin, Lenin, are interested in their own power, and these are authoritarian leaders, right? They do not want competition, so that they're against religious belief, because that gives competition to them. Whenever you've got a sacred that essentially takes a level above the government, right? Because you hear people say God, family, country, right? Or God, country, family, or whatever. God's always on top. So essentially, that gives people a reason to think that the rule of the law of God goes above the rule of and law of society. They don't want that, right? And what they do is they put religion down, but they all and then they also do what you see in North Korea, which is to claim themselves as gods. So it is not because the atheists. It's not because of the atheism. It is because they don't want the competition. And if you look at
but I mean, you're kind of making a mute point. The whole point is that people conquer not because of faith or lack thereof. It's always for personal interest. So people may try to use faith to justify their actions, but that's just not the reality. I mean, it's just obviously their actions are for self-serving purposes.
Yeah, there's some of that. I mean, I think of like the English kings and things like that going back for centuries.
Well, so
you're right. Some of them are going to be.
Causation for conquest is religion, then that would really just validate the religion, because as an atheist, you have to concede that the driving force is their own self-interest. Unless they actually are motivated by God, but you don't believe that, because you'd have to believe God exists to do so.
No, you don't have to believe God exists. You have to. You're talking about the individual or the authoritarian leader?
Right. In any case, like we'll just to make it simple, Mao versus a Catholic leader who's leading colonization. Both of them are acting on self-interest. Okay. Unless you're inferring that somehow religion has some type of greater power.
No.
Right? They're both acting on their own self-interest and delusions.
Not necessarily. They could be, but not necessarily. The Mao certainly was in self-interest. If you've read his biography, that's quite obvious. And there certainly have been kings and khans throughout history who have claimed the mantle of, the mandate of heaven, right? Have claimed that God was on their side and used it as a tool to rally the people, and really didn't care about the religion. But it was a tool that they could use to gather soldiers and whatever. Some religions, and more so at more and less at different times in history, depending on which religion we're talking about, are expansionary. Not all of them, right? Judaism is not expansionary. Hinduism is less expansionary. Catholicism certainly has been expansionary. Islam is certainly expansionary. So in those cases, you'd have to know an awful lot.
Hitler often spoke about a right Christianity, and it was very much a part of his.
So, there are examples. There are examples of both, is what I'm saying, Jay. There are times, and it's hard to know unless we really have good insight into people. We had pretty good insight into Lenin because he wrote letters to his mother, like throughout his life. So we had this good insight onto what his thought process was. Much less so with people like Stalin. But yeah, to make the blanket statement that atheism is the worst because Mao was the worst.
Oh no, I don't think that's the case. I was just saying that it's really like people enacting in conquests or doing heinous things. Their justification doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, people do terrible things out of self-interest, and they only justify it for different reasons. I mean, especially in the case of like,
no, the justification matters if religion is a piece of it, because we want to ultimately we would like to be able to understand what the justification was, right? So we can battle it in a cultural in a
well, I mean, you're battling human nature though, and then at the point like, I mean, if there's no God and there's no greater being to things, then what is the justification for even saying that we should avoid these instances? I mean, why does it matter?
That's a complete different topic, so I don't want to go over there until we finish this one. So are we clear that there were people in history who were self-motivated, power only, say Alexander the Great or somebody like that, Genghis Khan, Hitler, and then there's some people who used religion to rally the public behind them. I don't know the kings well enough to be able to rattle those off. And then there's some people
sure, but
that
they still weren't even as productive as someone who didn't use religion. So what does it matter?
It doesn't matter productivity. And I'm just trying to make the distinction. And there are some people that were thinking that they were doing God's work by converting Native American Indians by force into the religion, right? We just had how many people buried in Canada from like 100 years ago or something like that. So we have all three circumstances. And it would be nice if religion is a motivating factor in addition to power seeking. We would like to be able to recognize that when it does happen. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that personally, and I think that anyone who holds a religious belief, you couldn't hold that belief and also believe that others are true. So like, I only have one belief system that I believe is valid, and I don't think that conquest is the way to spread it. So sure, I don't, whatever motivates people is what it is. My whole point is just that people do bad things regardless of what they believe or don't believe.
But there's more than just the self-interest of a few megalomaniacs behind messianic religions in particular, less so Judaism, I agree. I mean, if you look at the Crusades and the Inquisition, these
both
were
of those were
dogmatic,
defensive actions,
organized things that were not particularly for anyone's personal profit or gain, but it was part of the tenets of it. And the whole idea right now of this end times coming and some of the political actions that religion pushes, which espouse cruelty, is problematic within the belief system and the way it's pushed. And that's where you're going to get atheists to argue against it. And yes, I agree. Marx did espouse a state that did not have religion anymore, that it wouldn't be needed. And certainly people distorted that to use it to gain power. I agree. And I don't disagree with your point there, but it's somewhat different than the religious teachings themselves espousing mass cruelty against groups of people. And
the reality
where
is
you're going to get atheists.
Catholicism is heretical, right? Roman Catholicism is heretical, and there's not actually any dogmatic. If you look at the ecumenical councils and the historical teachings of the church, there is not a single part of the religious teaching that says that you should spread the faith by force. And so, What are you combating? You're combating
Wait,
people who
there's not?
misuse.
But
Jesus,
absolutely not.
Jesus
No.
said, "I will bring a sword."
Christians are very active in doing missionary. I mean, I've known some currently going to Indian reservations on their summer vacation to work in what amounts
I would
to.
argue that for one, you have to define what does it mean to be Christian. Just calling yourself Christian is not really. I mean, I could call myself a rocket scientist. That doesn't make it true.
But you go on. You can look at websites that talk about their Christian groups that have missionary work. That basically is these schools that are horrible, in Indian
But I'm
reservations.
saying there's no validity.
You can't say they're not
claim
Christian,
that they're Christian
enough.
Yeah, well, they're not Christian at all, is what I'm saying.
But
they
they
can call
are.
themselves Christian, and I can
They're
call myself a rocket
organized by
scientist. It
churches.
doesn't make it true.
Well, what about
churches though?
what
Are they
about-
actually Christian?
Yeah.
What about the? I have a problem with the separating Catholics from Christians. As far as I'm concerned, if you're following the Bible, you're a Christian.
Well, I went and read I read a book about rocket science, and I watched Elon Musk fly a rocket once, so I'm a rocket scientist.
You think that's a fair comparison?
Yeah, absolutely. Just because somebody says that they follow the Bible or they're Christian doesn't make it true. I mean, the fact is that Christianity was a religion started by Christ, and he appointed the apostles. And
Okay.
directly in the, can I just finish my point? Directly in the early church, we have documentation. It's an apostolic succession faith. So the apostles appointed their successors, who appointed their successors. They proceeded to have ecumenical councils, so there were 7 of them, that all laid out the details of the dogmas and the beliefs and more or less the legalities of the faith. There are certain things you must do to be a part of the church, and you can't do that'll exclude you from the church. Rome was excommunicated from the church back in 1050. So Roman Catholicism has been in heresy since 1050 and proceeded to go to war against the rest of the body of the church. So the idea that just because they claim that they're Christian, now they get to be, now you are identifying them as Christian. I can make any claims about my character I want, but that doesn't make it objectively true. So if we're going by the historical accuracy.
Point made. So I'm curious. I mean, we know there are many sects of Christianity. I understand what you just said, so that's not the right word then, but many sects since AD, since the death of Christ.
Right.
Let's just say currently, when there's, I don't know how many sects, a few hundred, 1,000. What percentage, to the best of your guess knowledge, do you think that people are who call
are actually a part of the body of the church
are doing the right one or the right interpretation?
I would say if I just had to guess, I'd say about 30%. So the only church that has carried on the actual continuity of Christianity is the Orthodox Church.
Okay,
and
so 30%.
It has not spread. Yeah, I'd say maybe 30%. In which in the West, it would seem like 1% maybe, right? Because we only really see the outcomes of Roman Catholicism, which then leads to Protestantism and all these different variants. So like being in America, it seems like it's non-existent. You only see the bad apples, essentially.
Well, you said 30% is doing it right, correct?
Yeah, I'd say roughly, yeah.
Is that U.S. or global?
Global. Definitely not U.S. I mean, I think maybe 6% of the U.S. population is Orthodox.
Okay. So how should we, I'm not sure what the right word is. How should we cope with, treat those who are of that 70% globally or 94% in the United States who don't have it right?
I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, people do a lot of things wrong. I mean, it'd be nice if we could just educate everybody, and say, hey, look, like this is the things you're doing wrong. But the reality is that a lot of times people hold the beliefs that they do simply because that's how they were raised, or because it gives them some type of power gain or monetary gain or social gain. And it doesn't really have anything to do with any type of search for knowledge or understanding, or, actually trying to have goodwill.
That's not fair. I mean, anybody of the other 94%, and we'll just throw atheists in there as another group additionally. People generally believe honestly, okay, and are not trying to impose it as a general rule. So
I'm not saying they're necessarily trying to impose it, but just in the instance, like I've seen many a times where people hold fast to their beliefs without even being open to considering other things, because it just simply makes them uncomfortable. They think, how would my dad think if I were to consider this or act this way? How would my cousin think? Or I couldn't go to, I have a lot of friends at the church I go to. I don't want to disrupt my friend group. My church that I go to now, we do a lot of good things for the community. What would those kids be left with if I were to leave the church I'm at? You know what I mean? It's not always necessarily a negative thing that keeps people attached to their beliefs.
Okay, hold on. I got to drop. I got to in here twice now.
He's got an echo.
Now I brought in. I tried to bring in another guy, and it's him on the second line.
But he's got an echo.
That's why, because he's here twice.
Yeah.
So give me a second.
I just wanted to make a point. What do I call you, Jay Deadmon? What do you?
My name's Jordan.
Still echoing.
Call me Jordan.
Your name is Jordan. Did you say?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Jordan. I don't disagree with some of what you're saying, insofar as some people, their livelihood, and their socials. There's a lot of religion that is social, and they're part of an in-group, partly because of the church they belong to. That's true. I don't think that they don't believe because of that. And sometimes people quite late in life come upon crisis where the beliefs are tested and they question them and they abandon them. That does happen, but not for most people. As our host is saying, most people, even in time of loss and trial, still cling to those beliefs. And I wouldn't have a problem with that if it only brought them comfort and solace and didn't impact the rest of the world. That would be fine with me. But I do get your point in that, insofar as deep core beliefs are not something we consciously always even know or think about. And they're often not expressed until we're in some point where we're tested and there's a trial, which I certainly have been in my life. I'm old. So I had times when it was crisis and I did not turn to prayer and I did not hope for an afterlife and to be saved. That's not how I operate. But a lot of people don't come to that point until they reach that crisis. But aside from that, I don't think it's fair to say that people don't become molded by that social aspect of religion to where that is what they wind up believing. You hear what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying?
And I always find something wrong. You've been putting up with my shit just way too long.
Child there.
I'm so gifted at finding what I don't like the most. So I think it's time to us have a toast. Let's have a toast for the douchebags. Let's have a toast for the assholes. Let's have a toast for the scumbags.
I'm working on it. There he goes.
Yeah, I'm terrible at that too. Yeah, I mean, so I don't think that it's all that simple. I do think, especially in my specific paradigm with the Orthodox Church versus all these different offshoots that are not really based in truth. A lot of people just never have even been confronted with it, and have no. I mean, they're just living their daily life. They don't want to sit there and think of this high level of theology or what people see as legalism or things like that. They just want to just keep doing what they're doing. And it ends up being that people who are in higher positions just end up benefiting from the majority of people who just carry on about their daily life and happen to contribute to this organization.
Well, I think that's true of everybody, including atheists.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, most people just, they get up, they go to work, they spend time with their family, and, whatever they were raised to believe, they kind of just do that. And, it's not that they're malicious or that but a lot of times people just don't want to, I mean, especially when it comes to the when you're like within, what most people would call Christianity in these different varieties. Most people don't want to put a lot of thought and effort into discerning the differences and actually saying like, well, what's right or wrong? Well, if I can just believe in the right thing and I'm just a good person, which, what does it even mean to be a good person? I guess as long as you're not hurting somebody, they just kind of carry on.
Well, that's a part of a pluralistic society. So, that's okay as long as our overlaps don't harm and discriminate against each other. So
yeah, but I mean, you were asking like, all these people who call themselves Christians, many of them have never, especially in the West, I mean, most people haven't even heard of Orthodox Christianity. I mean, until the age of the internet, we didn't really have exposure to it. So, me being like, I converted as, yeah, I'd say so. I mean,
Orthodox you're right, it is small in the United States. I don't think it's any more right than the others, but because I think they're all wrong, but but that's okay. So did you guys have I think we lost sight of our original question. So let me see if I can pull somebody else up here and just go to a different topic here. So Jacob, you're Jacob Gordon, right? Because I got you in here twice.
Oh no, that was somebody else.
No, he's not Jacob Gordon. You called up, but it was interesting to talk to you, Josh.
Okay, I'm gonna try.
Yeah, it was good talking to you guys. I actually have to drive, so I'm gonna hop off. But thank you for having me on.
All right, bringing Jacob Gordon back in. Thank you, then. Thank you. Okay, have I got you now, Jacob?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sorry. I thought you were just double signaled the other guy, so I pulled you down. But let's see. What would you like to say here, or see if I can get someone else in with you?
So,
Acer, should I let you go?
Yeah, no, Acer. Yeah, no. So Acer brought up some very valid points.
Okay.
And the whole entire topic is so based here. It seems like through America. I was wanting to know what Acer's ideas was because he's very knowledgeable about all the stuff. With I don't think we need to take the negatives from either side between Christians or atheists. We've both had our past. That was but just like everything else, we can't take the negative from those.
Whoa. You got me there. I mean, you got me triggered there. What do you mean? What are the negatives of atheism?
Well,
because we already resolved the dictator thing. That's not atheism. That's authoritarianism.
Well, I don't think you resolved it, but you know what? You brought it up. You said the kings from our past. You didn't know their names and stuff like that. There have been some horrible ones that was based through Catholicism and everything else, just like the atheist with, Hitler was a maybe, but Stalin and there were several ones that, took millions of lives. I don't think we need to talk about those people.
No, the point is that atheism doesn't motivate
self-interest.
Atheism doesn't motivate the behavior. It's the self-interest and the authoritarianism that yields the behavior. Just because they're atheists, it's like just because they like carrots doesn't mean that they do these bad things. It comes from a different cause. So you can't put that behavior onto atheism.
Yeah, and that's why I said both sides, because we have, from the Christian side, we got them too. We have them too.
It is not both sides. I understand. Oh, yes, exactly. But don't blame the Christians who are acting on authoritarian basis, right? Like if you take, I want to say Constantine, because he was not a Christian until Rome started to like decline, and then he took Christianity on and made it the national religion because it was becoming into favor. He basically decided to change teams. So that's an example.
Sure.
Since I'm not aware of the kings, that he was not. We don't blame him for the religion. We blame him for the seeking the power. Right. So similarly, you don't blame the atheists for that.
I wasn't blaming the atheists whenever I said that both sides was at fault. Yeah, no, that's not what I meant there. Was there a new question here? Because like I said, I think me and Acer was about 40 minutes ago. I think we went down a couple different paths here.
I was trying to watch what your comments were, but it was hard to keep up with the comments.
I know it. The chat went crazy there for a minute.
Yeah, and the disruptors really make it fall apart. But
yeah, and like I said, I have an open mind. I am Christian, but I always love to hear both viewpoints, and I love discussing this stuff because I think it is educational, and that is the future of America and everything else is gathering information. That is intelligence, and so that was why I jumped in this chat, because normally I avoid these, but there was a couple good points. There were several things down through there. Like I said, it's been a little bit ago though. I had to go run in there and grab my AirPods because it was on speakerphone. So, but yeah, no. Acer, do you remember our original argument? What did I say? I said something like.
But I was basically curious more to hear how you received it, rather than to make any more points myself, because I said a lot.
Can you state it for the rest of us who weren't following that chat?
Do you want me to state?
My original question was, why would a atheist begin a discussion with a Christian? Just because obviously Christians have had doubts also, but atheists, do not believe in, like we're on two different sides of the aisle here. So I was just like, what's the point of the argument? Because to me, Christians are harmless.
Did you hear his answer, or would you like us to go through it again?
Yeah, I did. I thought you wanted me to do a rebuttal.
No, I didn't want to rebuttal. I just was curious to how you felt about the things I said, because I did, I think, talk at length about why atheists would even address the subject publicly. But I also want to point out one other thing here.
I'll restate for the people that are listening that weren't here at that time, is that it's when the religious try to impose their system onto others, especially things like gay being wrong and things like that, or gay being a choice. That's when that motivates us to step in.
Yes, and so okay, so. And I can only speak for myself because, like I said, I don't want to fall into the like there's bad people on both sides of the aisle here. But personally, as long as you can discuss something without hate, I don't see anything wrong with it. I can sit here and say to you all, I don't think being gay is right. I don't think abortions are right. I don't think anything like that is right down that avenue. But that's my viewpoint. And so whenever like that, the topic gets discussed, it always goes to very negative, very hate, very spirited, very loud conversation. And it's not that side from the majority here in my small town and everything else. And like I said, we try to love everybody. But I don't really like the indoctrination of adults shoving that onto adolescents. Can we talk about that? Is that going to?
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing first?
Is that too much?
No, it's good. Go ahead.
One thing I'll say where I agree with. I just want to say one thing quickly. It's short. Where I will agree with your point that if you're looking particularly at TikTok lives and what passes for debates is people looking to get into fights. Those people on both sides go online as a form of sport to engage in invective against people. And let's take them out of the equation, because to me, that is just a function of how social media is working right now. And it's not
Looking
really
for a
about
click.
this issue. Okay?
Looking for a click. No, I agree. I agree 100%. And so, I mean, and so I'm trying to feel out you guys also, because, you know, I've gotten these discussions before and I've received some serious backlash, or whatever. And so I'm just like, whenever it comes down to parents shoving, you know, and I'm not going to lie to you, I'm not very familiar with the trans, you know, like trans families and stuff like that, shoving that onto their children. I just know that it exists. What do you all feel about that, or how do you all feel about that?
I can talk about that.
Let's just say somebody under the age of, let's just say somebody under the age of, what do you think, like 15, 14?
Okay, Acer, you start.
As far as the child?
Okay, so let's talk about the trans issue, where there's a lot of propaganda that I'll bet, because you live in a small town, you said?
I research a lot, though. So,
okay, but I live in a small town as well.
Hold on a second. Let's back up 1 second here. Acer, did you say you're homosexual? Is that what you just said a second ago? Okay. Perfect.
So,
perfect.
Because of that, and because of the people I've known, and because I'm older, probably the oldest person in the room right now, I have known a lot of trans people. And I also have worked in healthcare, so I can talk about gender-affirming care. And a lot of what you're hearing, because I'm hearing it in my small town, is horribly slanted propaganda. So let's talk about gender-affirming care, which is the thing that gets people to bring out the torches and the pitchforks with kids, okay? So what do you think is the most...
Hold on, Acer. I'm sorry. Let's answer his question. Because Jacob, your question is basically about having a concern about giving kids this information, kids below, what did you say, 15?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair. I mean, I don't think people under 15 get to make
decisions. I want
to get to the most egregious thing that's being talked about, which isn't just information. It's actually about surgeries on children.
But let's answer his question, and then we can go on to that.
Well, I think I want to start with the surgeries, because that's more cut and dry, hateful. It's the wrong thing to do, right? Is that what you're hearing? Surgery on minors?
Yes. That's the most egregious, but yeah. Let's start. We can start from the worst and get to the better.
Yeah. So what is the reality of surgeries? They do happen to minors.
Yeah.
Where you want to pass legislation to outlaw, which is happening.
Yeah. Yes.
So what surgeries are we talking about?
Well, the whole... so if you are... okay, and yeah, I mean, it's a pretty basic thing here. You know, I saw kids in a small town, you know, I saw the girls with the backwards hats grow up to be, you know, women. I saw boys that was, you know, like I said, we grew up in a good town, so I'm not going to say that they were hated on, but they were treated differently. I'm not going to lie about that.
Yeah, but I'm talking about what gender-affirming surgeries actually take place on minors. What's the reality?
Do you not believe that that's happened?
Oh, I do believe it. I know about it because I worked in hospitals for decades.
Yeah.
I'm a healthcare professional.
So what was... So what you're going to have to clarify a little bit. Do you want to know what my opinion is on that?
Your knowledge of it, because it's not a matter of opinion. It happens.
Yes. Okay. So, and this actually, so I'm just, I'm going to compare that to something else, and that is Catholicism for me, which would be baptizing children, babies. They have no opinion. They don't get to choose. They don't get to do anything, but it is pushed on them. by their parents, and I don't
Right.
agree with that either.
We need to
that's
back
the
up.
same thing.
But
We need
here's
to back
the
up.
here's
Guys,
the surgeries.
Guys, we need to
Over
back up.
90% of gender affirming surgeries happen on male children who have an illness called gynecomastia. Do you know what that is?
I do not.
It's males who are growing breasts. The rest of above that 90%, it is children born with ambiguous genitalia, where the parents come in and the doctors come in and decide that you can't leave that child with partly male and partly female gonads. And so they pick one and alter the child. None of this has anything to do with trans people. But if you go and you pass a law outlining gender affirming care, that's exactly what gynecomastia is. And that's exactly what altering a child's genitalia happens shortly after birth. It happens in the first few years.
So Acer, can I ask
the surgeries that actually happen.
Okay. Can I ask you what the percentage of Americans that is actually happening in children? Like the percentage of
I don't know the
babies?
percentage, but I can tell you for sure that boys who have a glandular malfunction, who to the point where they won't go to school, will run away from home because they're growing breasts. Imagine being a prepubescent boy growing breasts. And with the misogyny in our society, how that child, so they correct that by removing the breast tissue. That's gender affirming care, by the way.
I do think we're getting way offline here.
Guys, stop. I got to push in here a third time. You're both missing a core. I think we've jumped across three assumptions. And I'm not trying to dispute anything you're saying, Acer. I know you're right on that stuff. But what I'm hearing, Jacob, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, is that do you think that being trans or gay, I don't know if either one you want to take, because you're kind of talking about not wanting to educate kids about this at a young age. Do you think all those things are a choice?
I think it's a lot more complicated than that. And I'm not trying to dodge the question here. I saw a kid. I was friends with a boy that I actually did think that I was just like, he's different. I think that he could have went that way. And then I saw girls that I didn't think that way that turned out that way. And so I'm not going to, I don't really want to talk about choice. I don't want to talk about whether being like born gay or anything like that, because I think it's so much more complicated than that.
Well, I mean, it's fine if you don't know. It is perfectly fine. So that's okay.
Well, I mean, I thought he could tell his experience.
So I'm not quite sure. Okay, go ahead, hey, sir.
You were about to ask me a question, so go ahead. That's the only surgeries happening.
Okay, yeah. I know. Because I'm hearing from Jacob, and please correct me if I'm making an assumption, if I'm getting this wrong, that you seem to think it's. I don't understand. If you didn't think it was a choice, what would be the harm of educating kids about any of this?
I don't have a problem with educating. I have a problem with
surgeries and treatment.
Like I said, obviously. I mean, I do think, like I said, he brought up a medical condition, and I think that is getting abused.
Okay. But it's
not. Let's drop the gay issue then, because then that's not a problem here within this conversation. So it's the trans issue you're concerned about. Now, let me just to get this on the table. Do you think? Sorry, I've been drinking. Do you think that being trans is a choice.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No, sorry, lost my button. So being a trans as a choice,
is it a choice?
Man, that's a tough one too. I'm from a small town, so I don't see a lot of this stuff. I don't
that's
see.
Fair. That's fair if you don't know.
I don't see some of that stuff. The radicalism over all of this stuff, I do have an issue with.
One step at a time. So, okay, go ahead. You just don't have the experience to know, which is like most of us, right? Because we weren't. The trans issue has become publicly discussed more recently. Let's just say, whatever, 10 years, whatever.
And that's the key. What you're saying right there is, you don't see trans people in your small town because they hide.
Yeah.
So no, they don't anymore. I do know two, and they're generally accepted by the public. And then I go to like a bigger town, and I mean, I've seen other stuff too, or whatever. The radicalism is the part that, like I said, they need, the trans people need a voice.
Okay, let's. Why is it?
What are we trying to? What's the goal? What's the end game?
The goal is to let people be who they are. Being trans is not a choice. Being trans is not a choice. Okay? That's the truth of it.
I've known quite a few trans people of various ages, and I can tell you for a fact that it has been around I'm 70.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of it. I came out right after Stonewall, which was in 1969. I came out in the early 1970s. Okay. I have a long history of knowing gay people, trans people, lesbians.
Okay, so Jacob, given that it's not a choice, I don't see what is radical about wanting to allow these people to have treatment. We can talk about at what age doing certain things like surgery and starting hormones. Sure. We can talk about that. We can get to that in a sec. But I'm not sure.
From a small town, I don't understand the what exactly, like what rights they're fighting for. I don't understand like some of this stuff. Or is it just being generally accepted? Because in our day and age,
it's surviving.
No. Okay,
hold on. How so? Trans people are beaten for being on the street. They're not allowed to work. Trans people have, especially in their teen years, have a 7 times higher rate of suicide. They're often ostracized from their homes.
Yeah.
So the radicalism is saying they want to be visible and not hidden.
Okay, the first, and I'll take it below that, Acer, and saying that it's not, being accepted is a second level goal. The first level goal is to survive, right? You don't survive at a suicide rate. I don't know what the proper word is to substitute
or
that.
Homicide rate is very high for trans.
Yeah.
I wish I had.
So we teens need to get treatment so that they to get attention, so that they can have whatever treatment that is medically appropriate. Okay, so we can't teach discrimination where the discrimination largely teaches that this thing that's happening to them is not real.
So where's the discrimination coming from? Do you think? Is it the government or is it the public?
It comes from people who generally, some of it comes from the Bible, because the Bible says being homosexual is wrong, at least male versus male. Some of it comes from conservatism, which is a personality piece where people are uncomfortable with things that they are not familiar with. They're less comfortable with things that they're not familiar with. And some of it comes from the spread of ideas and the reinforcement of those negatives So that's why I always ask, is it a choice? Because usually, more commonly than not, when I talk to theists, they think it's a choice. Therefore, they think it's something that's being pushed onto society. Not
I think it
realizing.
can be. I'm not going to say, but like I said it's complicated. But you know what I mean? Because
well, why is it complicated? I don't see how it is complicated. If you're born with a birth defect, if you're born with a bad lip or something like that, that's not complicated. You
so
want
say that
to,
again. Hold on, I missed that.
Okay, if you're born with something different, because
a defect. Okay.
Well,
I got you now.
I don't want to say it's kind of the wrong word, because there's nothing wrong with being a different way. In a way, it's no different than having red hair versus black hair, except that there are just less of them in a population. If 1% of a population is born a certain way, that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. It means it's a variation on the bell curve of human features, and there are fewer of them. Right. So if someone is born with whatever, sickle cell anemia or something, why wouldn't we want to treat that? So that's where I don't see why this is complicated.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong there. So, and like I said, I am simple-minded. I'm from a small town, Acer. So, like I said, just don't let anything I'm about to say offend you. But this is my general understanding of, and this doesn't have anything to do with. I actually don't know the different. Well, like I said, so being homosexual, I've seen it come from two different places. I've seen a kid, be a little bit different, when he was really young and stuff like that. And I'm only 38 years old. So I graduated in 2005. So I've seen some kids growing up that was always different or whatever. And this is back in the early 2000s. And this is small town America, Midwest town.
Yeah.
These kids did not get bullied, and like I said, that kid that I thought was different ended up graduating with 2 PhDs, got wife and 3 kids. But then I've got a first cousin that was raised by and like I said, do not get upset about this, please, because I'm simple-minded. I'm from a small town. Like I said, I love education like this.
Stop putting yourself down. We are all simple-minded. We all learn things we don't know. It's just, as long as you're willing to learn, we're all willing to learn. You're okay.
So my aunt died whenever these 2 boys, I can say their names, Clinton and Brian. Clinton was raised by my dad and my uncles, and Brian was raised by my aunts and my first cousin. And Brian is he actually, I can say this. I think he lives in Kansas City. He's a hairdresser. And he is he's homosexual. He has a tough time coming here and act like we know it, and he's talked to us about it, but he still comes back and tries to hide it, and we just wish he wouldn't, because he doesn't need to bring his girlfriend that he's friends with back here and stuff like that. I think at that point in Brian's situation, so this is my first cousin, I've told Brian this. I just said, you don't have to hide anything from us. If you need to find faults in people, you don't need to even find faults in people to come out and tell us everything about yourself. At that point, that's his fault, because we have already accepted it 15 years ago.
Well, okay, but you understand that the societal pressure and fear that he has, based on how people in a Bible dominant area or religious dominant area, he's afraid of that. Secret. So he can. You can't tell someone when to come out. They're going to have to make that decision on their own. Now you can do what you did, which is wonderful, I think, because you basically, I don't know how overt you were to make it clear to him, because maybe it was not as overt as you thought, but it sounds like you were and sincere and everything.
and I'm not,
Well,
and
that
I'm not the
helps.
only family member. It wasn't
Yeah.
pressure. It
Yeah.
wasn't pressure. It was just like, hey, Brian, my
Yeah.
brother, found him in St. Joe or met up with him in a gay club. My brother's not gay. He just went to or sorry, I don't even know if I can use that word anymore. But he went to a nightclub for men and seen Brian there, and he was just like, Brian, this like everybody knows,
Mm.
everybody knows. Would you, do you can do whatever you want to, but like coming out and like I said, we know that he's never been married, and see that's another thing
Yeah.
too is he's almost 45 or 50 years old now, and the family would have genuinely accepted him if he would have
Yeah.
came back with a husband or anything, and we're a bunch of hicks. I mean, we're out here,
But I
in
want you to
small town America.
I want you to understand something. What you're talking about now is called passing. Have you heard that before?
No,
No.
explain, please.
So, I mean, you can't say that you know that it's okay for him because you haven't walked in his shoes and you don't know what experience he's had outside of the family in your town and elsewhere where he doesn't feel safe. So
I think he feels safe in Kansas City, and
he may or may not in different parts of Kansas City at different times of day. He may feel safe at night with his friends in certain neighborhoods he might frequent, but not at his job. You don't know that. You just don't know
sure.
what he's experienced that causes him to try to pass, which is also a much bigger issue with trans people.
Hey, how's it
Especially
going?
if they transition later,
Hi,
where
Jay.
they're not showing.
Ask a question.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Go ahead.
Hi.
Where did the origins of trans and gay people start? Like, where's the history? Where does it start from? Like the beginning of time on that.
It's
How did
evolutionary.
this happen? Like,
It's
who
biological.
put this together?
We know it's based on physiology and the structure of the brain. So you're going to find it basically in all cultures at all times, which as far as all of human history.
Okay, can you say that to the Muslims?
Say that again.
What about all the cultures that don't accept that? Like, is it because they're not allowed to, or just because that's just like the improper way to go about life and to think through things? Like, that doesn't seem sustainable long term for healthy human growth if all cultures were like that. I think we get like one exception. I think we get a pass because of freedom. I don't think this is appropriate abroad unless it's pushed on you. So how does that make sense? How does your answer make sense?
Because it is a physiological thing. It's like being born with red hair.
And this is not the best culture that's ever existed.
Yeah, it's not culturally based. You're right. Different cultures will appreciate it or not appreciate it and discriminate and worsen than others. But it is not based on culture. It's based on biology and physiology. We know that now. There's a lecture by Robert Sapolsky about gender identification. He's a neurologist from Stanford University. If you want to watch that on YouTube, to get some of that information.
So how would it make sense to the future? Like how do you see the future playing out if this is allowed abroad across the whole world? Is it like, what does that look like? Would it paint the future of us if this continues on with nobody to put any like repercussions off this way of thinking? And
it looks like have people being comfortable like saying that they're trans, and trans often is known from like age 3, and then culture not making them feel like it's inappropriate in any way because that's just the way they were born, and then allowing them to have treatments. And the discussion I think is valid around when to have treatments, and there are medical and cultural reasons around that. Basically to the point where it's not a thing, it's not an issue. So we have 1% of the population that's trans. So what?
1% is
I think
like
that's about right, isn't it, Acer? 1%.
It depends on
what
how you
happens
count,
less?
but yeah, it's about there.
What if
And
it grows to like 40 or 50, and like what if it gets too high? Like is there a certain extent where it would not be a good thing, where it becomes now a bad thing, so we should fight against it at some point, or do you keep fighting for it?
It's not contagious.
Are you going to grow 6 fingers?
No.
Are you gonna
Seriously, it is the same thing. It is a biological, DNA based, physiological, which means physical at the cellular level. It involves the sex organs that you're born with, and sometimes they're not formed properly. It involves the hormones that come out of the various sex organs. It involves the feedback to the brain that regulates.
It doesn't really answer the question, but I do appreciate the insights, but like that doesn't really answer the question. Like, at what point is it not a good thing to continue to fight for anymore? And to the point,
it's never not a good thing to fight for a minority that is in a situation that's not of their own doing. That's the answer you're looking for.
it's actually
never.
I disagree, but thanks for letting me ask my questions.
No, that's fine. You can disagree. So tell me why.
Sexuality and
Tell me why you disagree.
gender roles occur in nature in the animal kingdom outside of humans.
Tell me why you disagree, Jing. What's your reasoning?
Before he says anything, can I say something about about my statement earlier about radicalism in that community? I had a cousin that had a caved-in sternum, and I had a cousin that had a cleft lip, and we also had a girl at that point that identified as a cat. Well, she didn't at that point. We didn't know what that was. They have a name for it now, but my cousins got bullied way worse. It was a constant fight to try to keep them off of that. And, and she was like I said, this is back in early 2000s. So there was no name for, now I think they call them Furbies or something. But at that time, nobody, like, she was forbidden. Like, you couldn't even mess with her unless, like, you were going to get in some serious trouble if you messed with her. But for some reason, it was okay for my cousins to get bullied because of a cleft lip and a caved-in sternum, and those are both birth defects also. And normalizing defects, I think, is a bigger cause than transphobia, because I think it's more. There's a more percentage of the population that's happening to, and that's why I was talking about radicalism earlier. I'm sorry, like I said, it's coming in a little bit late, but that was my argument about that subject.
But there are people advocating for the disabled as well.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Anti-bullying has made not just strides, but just huge leaps, and it's been so great. I don't know. I don't have a lot of time. Do you all want to switch to a different subject? I do have another argument.
Sure.
I am genuinely curious about how you all feel as atheists, because I don't get to have these conversations in small town America. Like I said, we're prominently Christian and everything else. So these arguments don't come along very often.
Well,
I do want to know.
Are you an atheist?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are other atheists in my tiny town in Appalachia.
Okay, Jacob, go ahead. Ask.
So I'm not part of that community. Yeah, I'm not. So I would have to be. I'm sure there are some here. Obviously, I just like I said, in my group, or whatever you want to call that, we don't have any. I have found myself in those groups
that you know of, but okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I grew up in a different town, and I found myself in small town America in a group of left-wing liberals, and this would have been back in 2003. And then they went on, like as we got older and grew apart a little bit, it did end us, as far as our friendship goes. And see, that's a very interesting topic also, because as a Republican, I never expressed hate. There was 8 of them and 1 of me, And I just didn't know where that came from either. Like I said, we don't talk anymore. We're not friends anymore. And I'm not saying that that's the Democrats or anything like that. I'm just saying whenever a majority of a group, the majority of a group, whenever they have that big of a voice, it does weigh on you. And it probably was beneficial on my part. I did stick with my roots. I came out of there just like I went in, Republican, Christian, but it did weigh on me.
What's your question, Jacob? I'm not hearing the question.
My question is, if everything has a cause, that means the universe has a cause and a creation.
No.
What is your all's beliefs? Like I said, I am ignorant in this subject when it comes to your all's viewpoints. Like I said, I've heard some of these other arguments, but
did you say cause?
Cause.
Yes, everything must have a cause.
If everything
or
must
creation.
have a cause, why doesn't the universe have a cause? And then why isn't that cause? And then why isn't that cause God, or just the creator? Okay, that's fine.
Answer,
do you want to answer that?
I would suspect that myself and the host are going to have different answers about this.
That would be more interesting if we did.
Because I think that there's much less lockstep dogma among atheists than there would be in anything.
So
what's
your answer?
So mine would be I think that the way the human mind works is always trying to find meaning in things. And I've come to understand that some things have no particular relevance, meaning, purpose, cause, motivation. It is not a Hollywood movie with a beginning, middle, and end. And that I don't think that everything has to have a purpose. I think there is a very obvious randomness to the universe.
Well, let's stick on cause. Let's stick on cause, not purpose. Let's stick to cause.
So I don't think that there's a cause. And I'm also very much more willing than most religious people I know to accept saying, gee, I can't say where origin, I don't know that there is such a topic as origins in my mind as to how the universe formed. I think we don't know.
So Acer, and this was legitimately the reason why that friends group didn't convert me to atheism, and I don't think I'd have ever been I don't really ever think I was on the Democratic side. I would always leaned Republican, but the fact that I do believe everything needs a creator. I don't see stuff happening magically out here, unless I go get the $50 ticket in Las Vegas, to go see a magic show. The universe was
magic,
always
not me. I don't think magic exists.
The universe to me was always the big picture. Everything else we argue on Earth, to me, just always seemed like details. And, like I said, out there is a very big world. I think you all know, actually, you all might know it better than me. But there are more galaxies than there are specks of sand on Earth. And I just don't see that stuff popping up out of nowhere. And it's easier for me to believe that there is a creator than just, nothing's nothing, right? Nothing is nothing. So
we don't exactly. Go ahead. Sorry.
So to think of something, like I said, and this has always freaked me out, and I think honestly that it should freak out any human being.
Do you think do you think empty space is nothing?
I think the most important thing in the universe is time. Always.
Do you think
that's how we weigh the planets? That's how everything is based off of. Time is the most important thing
empty space
we can talk about.
Do you think empty space is nothing?
Well, I mean, what are we talking about? Is nothing nothing? Or is
empty space? Yeah, I'm kind of asking what's your definition of nothing. Is empty space nothing?
Nothing's nothing. Nothing's nothing to me. You
Okay.
know,
So
nothing is nothing.
nothing is. So space is more than nothing. Space within our universe is more than nothing. You okay with that?
Space is more than nothing.
Is
Oh yeah, I mean obviously. I
space?
mean it's probably more complex than Earth. By I mean
Well,
by a lot.
okay. I guess a couple of points. Really the point that I usually do on this is, well, first off, we've got to put aside the question of the concept of quantum physics, because there is a part of quantum physics that says something does come from essentially nothing. But to me, the concept of cause and effect is something that we know within our universe from our own experience, right? We see it happen all the time. Play pool, right? You see cause and effect. I think the logical error here is applying cause, which is something that's we see happens operating within our universe, to outside of our universe where we don't know what that is. We don't know that cause and effect is a thing that is logically even coherent outside our universe. We just don't know what's outside or before our universe. So
you're saying that applies to a different set of laws of physics, or different set?
I'm saying we don't know.
We do know one thing, and you mentioned quantum physics, and quantum physicists today would not say that everything erupted from nothing. They would say that the Big Bang that we refer to was not an origin.
Yeah,
it's a mathematical concept.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when you're I understand you, Jacob. I understand you said it scares the bejesus out of you to think that there's no cause and there's no order to it. And I believe that, and I would never try to change you until you try to get to the point where you politically impose your ideas on me, which is, what happened to Galileo. It took the church 500 years. He died in house arrest.
Most of the scientists died without even knowing of their achievements.
And that's the reality of what bothers me about the aggressiveness of messianic religions, that it goes beyond your having the right to get comfort from your belief that there's an order and there's a harmony and whatever else you say. And to me, it's not magic. Magic's your thing. Your belief in spirits and in
I was joking. That was a hypothetical. That was a hypothetical. I was actually talking about. I was talking about the Big Bang whenever I was referring to magic in Las Vegas.
Yeah, when they talk about the Big Bang, I'm no physicist.
Because I don't believe in magic. That'd go against my views, actually. But go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, so the Big Bang, they don't see Big Bang as an origin. It's just when they calculate the motion of objects in the universe accelerating, and every time they find something new, if they reverse it backwards, it comes down to what they call a singularity. But they don't believe necessarily that they found everything about what that is, or even that there was a singularity. It's just a mathematical concept right now. And the laws of quantum physics do not jive with the electromagnetic laws that talk about gravity and cause and effect that we believe. Quantum physics doesn't follow those rules, and they can't reconcile them, and they don't know how. And when they start talking about it, my eyes glaze over because I'm not a physicist, but I listen anyway, because we're sort of on a new frontier with both biology and physics. We're learning new things every day. Yeah, and I'm very interested in that.
Yeah. So this guy came and talked to me. His name was Nasser Siddiqui, and he was a atheist, and he ended up with shingles, and it was he was dying in the hospital, and that was his last breath. You actually talked about this a second ago. I don't know your name. Believe in reality. My name's Jacob.
Right here, Phil.
What was your name? Phil. Phil, so you actually brought this up about you had never brought up, like, in your whenever you was in trouble, you would never go shout out to God or something like that. Was that the first part of this live that I got into? Regardless, it doesn't matter. You said that, Acer. Okay, my bad. So you said that you would never do that. Well, he did, and he walked out of the hospital. He was rich. He's actually he's been disbarred and everything else, but he was rich. They took everything from him now or whatever. But he told me, that everything has a creator. You bring me one thing on earth that didn't have a creator.
Yeah.
Anything from anything that you've seen, made, done, anything, everything's always had a creator. And so how do we apply that logic to the universe?
You don't.
Because we don't have proof of a creator. The only thing that we have proof of is formation. Trees don't spring into being fully grown. Trees form from a seed and grow into a tree. Now, what you can compare that with are creations of living organisms, whether it is a bird nest, an automobile, or a footprint mud puddle.
So, sorry. So, what is your name? Because you've got a pretty long handle there. I can't pronounce that. I'm going to fail.
Kai Shack?
Kai is fine.
Kai's fine.
Hi, Kai.
So,
and welcome, Cool Breeze. Also, I let you in too.
Hi, Cool.
yeah. No. Nice for you all to join. This is going to be constructive. So, Kai, if everything has to have a creator, and so our discussion, hold on a second. Our discussion earlier was the universe, and so we've kind of jumped out of Earth a little bit. And so whenever I'm talking about a creator for things, I'm talking about mass and gravity and time and space and all of that stuff. I'm not necessarily talking about the organisms on Earth, because all I have to do is ask you who created photosyntheses, what created seeds, what created, like we can take this thing all the way back to the beginning. And at that time,
I would like to introduce you to something called the argument from ignorance. That does not mean that I'm calling you ignorant. The argument from ignorance is simply
lack of
this.
knowledge.
We don't know how something happened, therefore a God did it. That doesn't make any more sense than I don't know. I don't know is always a logical and an honest answer. The only time that you can say that something is created is if you have evidence that it was created, such as a wristwatch, a computer, an automobile. And the way that you know that it was created is by comparing it to things that we know naturally formed. No one dug the channel for a river to flow.
Yeah, but see, your lack. What did you call that again? What was your terminology there? It was something of ignorance.
Appeal to ignorance.
Appeal to ignorance. So I can use the same thing because you don't know either. And so that's why I like. So for me, and like I said, I'm not calling you ignorant at all, because you're clearly not. For me, it's easier to believe. Not easier, because I don't ever take the easy route, obviously. But for me, it makes more sense for there to be a creator of those things than to think of them coming from. And I don't know if he was in here whenever he asked me about what is nothing. Nothing to me is nothing. So if we look at the universe like a blank page, you can go throw a blank page out on the piece, out on the road. it's
Well, let
going to
me
deteriorate
introduce you.
nowadays, but nothing's going to get written on that page. Nothing's going to happen to that that's going to create something.
Right. The term nothing, I believe, comes from Lawrence Krauss. Lawrence Krauss misused the word nothing, and what he meant by nothing was a lack of existence. And what that means is we don't know what exists before Planck time. Planck time begins at the beginning of our universe. There are other theories, however, that speak about the multiverse. Okay? If you could imagine bubbles in water, when one bubble bursts because it's gotten too big, it becomes other smaller bubbles. And this is the way that they believe the multiverse is, or how it exists. Now, can we prove it? No. Because as far as we know, Planck time is as far back as we can see. There may come a time in the future when we discover another universe that has sprouted from our own. We haven't reached that period in time yet either. But
Kai, I think we've jumped off subject here just a little bit because
let me bring you guys together. Let me bring you guys together to make sure we're talking about the beginning of the universe, and not trees and rocks. Okay. So, Jacob, we do know how trees and anything biologically complex came to be. So let's just talk about the beginning of the Earth. Yeah. So let's just talk about the beginning of the universe. So, Kai, so what you're describing is hypotheses about how the universe began,
right.
And there are many of them, and I can throw out some philosophical ones in addition.
Well, an action's going to cause a reaction.
We don't know that. I made that point before. We don't know that before
that was
the universe.
Talk, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I mean, these are all different hypotheses that are stacked up. We can't say that any one of them is most likely to be true because we don't have the information. So what's puzzling me and possibly Kai is that why would you go to a creator, especially a sentient, intentional creator, other than just the intuition that makes sense to you? That seems to be a hypothesis just lined up with another 20 that we can't take higher than the hypothesis level.
Right.
So why? So everything that you see on Earth has a creator. Why wouldn't that be your first instinct?
No, because we can take you to the Planck time, which is like something like 10 to the minus 24 seconds, and tell you that story about how the solar system evolved and how protons came to be. That's out of order, but all the way up to how trees.
You all can explain that?
We can.
Because I'd be interested to hear it.
We can. I've done it a few times. It takes time, so this may not be the place to do it right now.
Okay. And I can research this.
Get yourself a book, or there's a really wonderful, great courses. I got it on Audible called Big History. Okay, it takes you from the beginning of the universe to current day, and you'll learn more than you ever have in about 10 hours. And it's divided up into like 45-minute, audio things or whatever. It's audio and video.
I will research that. I still will.
Yeah.
I will almost guarantee you that I will fail understanding how everything they're talking about came to existence from the very beginning, because that was the argument initially, was nothing is nothing.
Well, we don't.
And from nothing, there is nothing.
Okay, but you understand that these are two subjects. One is, how did we come from no universe to a universe? Mm-hmm. And then the rest of it is, how do we come from, the Big Bang to trees?
Can I ask you a question?
I think the best point that you can start from is to assume that you know nothing. And once you assume that you know nothing, you remove the filters that you have, right? The presuppositions that you have, whether you were raised religiously or whether you adopted a religion, that causes certain presuppositions to occur in your mind. The fact that you can't see anything but creation means that you naturally assume that a creator must exist because of all of these creations.
Yeah.
If you assume that you know nothing, that frees your mind to new possibilities. So
can we let Cool Breeze in there for a second?
Yeah, I want to hear Cool Breeze's thoughts on this.
Yeah, she has something to say.
Yeah, hi guys. I just want to give a question. Maybe you heard it before, but I'll just echo it again. The question goes like this: would you agree that nothing cannot produce something? And
No.
if so, then if the universe did not exist, but then came to exist, wouldn't this be evidence of a cause beyond the universe?
Yes, but it doesn't state what that cause is. The cause, like I said, according to the multiverse theory, is another pre-existing universe that our universe came from. That's only a hypothesis that we can't prove, we can't test, and we may never be able to know that.
It is so strange because all the answers are in the Bible. A lot of people don't like the Bible, but they are there.
No.
The Bible is nothing but a claim.
Yeah.
The Bible is only arguments and claims. They're not justified.
As far as the origin of the universe goes, the Bible is it only deals with it the very the first couple of chapters, mostly in the first.
In the beginning, God created man and earth.
It is scientifically incorrect. So that's
because science wants proof of evidence, right? But
of course,
actually,
anybody who wants to know what's true wants proof.
Yeah, but what a coincidence that science agrees with a verse of the Bible in the book of Romans when it comes to evidence.
What does that matter? If it's right about one thing and wrong about 100 others, would you?
It's in agreement. This one verse is actually agreeing with science.
In agreement with what? Okay, give me a specific example then. What are we talking about? Give me one phrase.
Yeah. Okay, it says, from the time the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky and all that God made. They can clearly see.
That's wrong. That's wrong. The universe, Earth didn't come into existence for about 7-8 billion years after the universe began.
But Phil, your base is based off of time, and that's something that we believe in, that God created. And so, like, your time frame could be incorrect.
It doesn't matter if God created time, unless you want to argue that time doesn't exist.
Could I show you something on camera if you give me permission?
I don't think I can. I don't think there's a way to do it.
Oh, okay.
You can turn your camera on as long as it's not.
Well, it's nothing bad. I'm not going to show nothing wrong.
That's up to you.
Well,
you turn your camera on.
Here's something else I would like to add that I believe many comic books use real life cities like Chicago, New York, Paris. They mention current technologies that we have, like computers, and they've run the gamut. Does that mean that because those comic books contain some parts of nonfiction that superheroes are real?
Comic books that were written in the 30s, too.
Right.
I just wanted to point out a couple things that haven't been mentioned, especially for some of the things Jacob's saying. You realize there is some evidence for the Big Bang. There's several different disciplines of science that have found measurable evidence of the Big Bang. Now, we don't know what precedes it, but when you're talking about language like beginning, creation, origin, time, these are all human
constructs,
conceptions that we've created, invented in our minds that may not apply at all outside the realm of the known universe. Or there may be no time going. Time.
Hey, sir. So my time doesn't have anything to do other than the fact that we revolve around the Earth, and that obviously we've made up the 24 hours, 60 minutes, 60 seconds, all that stuff or whatever. But that's not my measure of time. It is the measure of the way that the Earth travels around the universe, and how precise it is, and everything else. And like I said, that also comes down to gravity and mass and all of that stuff. And like I said, when it comes to me, I just feel, and I think that's what Cool Breeze was talking about. I think I got his name right. And he was talking about the same thing. I think that those measures that's not a theory. It's not something man created. It's something somebody else did. And I think with all of those anomalies that are taking place in this universe and everything else, I refuse to believe that it's random.
Well, okay.
And these are two different ways. These are two different ways of thinking. I know this. I know.
No. They're not different ways of thinking. We all agree we're in reality. Okay, so we're trying to talk about the same thing here. So
yes,
there are basic laws of physics in our universe. We know what those are.
Yeah, so, on Earth.
In our universe. Earth is just a piece of it, and it seems to be consistent throughout the universe. We have nothing to just.
For example, the speed of light, gravity.
Speed of light, the mass of a proton, mass of an electron, the strength of gravity, different things like that. So Jacob, the better question for you would be, how did those numbers, so let's just say the mass of the proton, how did it come to be X and not Y? Okay. Is that valid?
No, I don't believe so, because, for me, like I said, then this was my point all along, was because God made it so. Like, everything makes sense because we had a creator.
No, it doesn't make sense, because the creator is a intuitional assumption. The intuition we can appreciate, because we live in this, what Neil deGrasse Tyson calls a middle ground of bigger than quantum physics and smaller than galactic scales. So and we seem to experience cause and effect. So the idea that that the universe has a creator is not justified. It's just one of many options. So the fact that you have put your Vegas bet on that particular one as opposed to any of the other ones does not seem justified beyond the intuition. But your intuition is so strong on there, that's where you're choosing to put it.
Let me make a second reflection.
I don't believe so.
Let me make a second reflection here, Jacob. So quantum physics, which is the study of subatomic phenomenon,
I know
still our universe, but none of our laws of physics apply at that level. They don't work. We've learned that.
Which ones do?
That.
Quantum mechanics.
So quantum physics has spent a lot of time trying to find a universal set of rules that will parallel and work both in our universe at the macro scale of planets and galaxies and everything, and subatomic level. And we have not found anything relating to time, space, or anything that defines everything. So in that sense, the concepts of time, the concepts of speed, the concepts of mass go out the window, and realizing that that's possible. We have to be brave enough to recognize that we know nothing, like Kai said, and that there's so much more to learn. And when we cling to prior beliefs, we stunt that growth. You talked a story before about a man who was an atheist and was very wealthy and was wound up in the hospital with, I presume, a very serious illness, who suddenly turned and discovered faith. and believed in a creator. And I believe that happens. I believe that happens as often as it happens in the other direction. But I also think when I reflect on it, in my opinion, this is anecdotal, but that's probably how a lot of mythology and religious belief got started. That people wanted the comfort of an explanation for something they've experienced, and especially as a group. So if that man went through a life-threatening experience, so did his loved ones, so did his caregivers, so did his doctors. And that they mutually came up with a plausible story to explain it that gave them all comfort. I think that's the origin of religion. Well, not all religion. I think religion is a matter of social order. And religion, in a way, is a parallel to politics, where we structure groups originally in a religious sense. You had the early beginnings of a hierarchy, a social hierarchy.
I know what you're saying. You're talking about anomalies. And so Nasser Siddiqui was an anomaly. You know, they said that he was going to die, wasn't going to make it through the night. He walked out of the hospital the next day. You know, we can call it a bunch of things, but, you know, mischaracterizing that, you know, generally we're going to use the term miracle. Both sides, obviously, because it's an anomaly.
No, we don't use the word miracle.
Let's just call it anomaly then. You know,
I'll go for miracle because I think that's where miracles come from. People experiencing.
Okay. And so you're saying that is what, from the beginning of time, created religion, and everything else like that. The things that you can't explain, or science can't explain, nobody else can explain. But see, that is my point. And I think we're just on two different sides of our way of thinking. It's easier for me to think that there's a higher power that creates this stuff, just like it is for you all to explain that there's reactions that take place, and you know, we can use some other words and everything else, but there's something that took place from nothing and created the universe and everything else. But
have you ever heard of Jacob? Have you ever heard of the anthropic principle?
No, I have not.
Some people call it the puddle argument. And what it basically means is the water that fills the space that forms a puddle says, look how exactly this puddle fits me. It's like it was created for me, because the puddle doesn't see anything other than creation. So the puddles, the space that the water fills, must have been created specifically for that water because it fits so well. Douglas Adams, the person that wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, came up with the puddle analogy. But it's basically the anthropic principle. I encourage you to Google, research, and read about it in depth on your own.
Yeah. And for me, Kai, for me, it's always came back to creation, or the creator of something, you know, and in my life, that is what makes sense to me. And we can agree to disagree on this or whatever, but you know, like for me, there's always been a creator of everything, or a action to every reaction. And that doesn't matter if we're talking about religion, politics, people, all science, physics, everything. There has to
let me
be
ask you one
somebody
question.
Start that.
Let me ask you one
that
question.
Motion. That's science to me.
Well, who, if you believe in creation, and okay, who then created the creator?
Oh, who created nothing? And that's why I said that it's easier for me to believe God than.
No, but that's a serious question. If you see that there's only creation, and that requires a creator, then who created the creator?
No, you have a valid argument there, in your all's mind, because you all are and I'm not trying to generalize you all at all here. I shouldn't have said it like that. But so every creation has a creator, except for God. Just like you all think that, and you said I don't remember the term, but just like the puddle argument that something happened from nothing, I would rather believe that there was a creator that made sense of all this stuff, because the anomaly, it's always the anomaly.
Rather as a preference, just a desire, and you're not doing science, you're doing philosophy. Because you are using, which is fine, but philosophy only gets you so far. You're using what makes sense to you, and you're trying to use good logic, even though you have a little error in there. But that's
according to you.
No, you do. But that's not science. Science requires experimentation. It goes past that. It's an additional tool. So what you're doing is philosophy, which is fine, but it only gets you so far. So
what experiment has man done that has created something from nothing?
Again, we're not, at least I'm not, disputing
nuclear particle physics.
Yeah.
I'm not going
to quantum physics because we can explain the Big Bang all the way up to you. So please go do that big history thing, and that'll give you a little more context. And let's take it up another time, okay? Because this is
no problem.
This is fascinating, but let me see if I can bring up some new people, okay?
Yep, no problem, man. No, I appreciate your all's time. Like I said, good night, good evening, and like I said, we can agree to disagree here. I think,
but I think there's room to.
It was constructive. It was constructive.
Yeah,
Very constructive.
I think there's come back another time.
Alrighty, my guy. Later, Phil.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Later.
And Acer, I'm going to drop you too and see if I can get a couple more in.
Okie doke. Have fun. Nice to talk to you, Jacob.
Thanks for all your
likewise.
Everybody follow, please, before you go. All right. Let's see. Who else can I bring in here? I'm going to throw a couple. Kai, stay around. You haven't had that much time, so we've had a fair amount of time, but not that many opportunities to say stuff. So
yeah,
I'm going to throw out a bunch of invites. Let's see who wants to come up. Yeah, I really wanted to get into having him understand the distinction that you were trying to make, was just this distinction between an airplane and a rock, essentially, right? Something that's created by an intentional mind, and something that just comes to be based on the laws of physics. Right. He didn't get that concept. But,
it's very sad. It's very sad to me that people, they have these filters, these presuppositions that they just can't shake. Yeah. And it's so sad to me. I probably feel about them the way that they feel about us, and them thinking that we're going to be going to hell and that they're in a battle for our soul. Whereas I see that we're in a battle for their mind and a battle for their reality, So
I understand that, but I mean, we don't have to.
Well, I don't want to force it either.
We don't have to convince them. I don't see the battle as a battle for their mind. I think that the intention of what they're trying, I don't know if he was doing it, but what some people are trying to do to help us not go to hell is strong and makes perfect sense to them. Right. I am more concerned at the societal level. So it's fine to have people around doing astrology and believing odd things that don't have any usefulness or essentially don't do any harm.
Right, but don't make our laws because of it.
Yeah, don't make the laws, but also the distrust of science that goes around and among the religious groups takes out of, number one, it prevents people from getting a lot of science-based jobs. You're right. You can't be a creationist and a geologist and be consistent, right? So, and when you harm the scientific method, when you don't understand the scientific method and support it, science funding goes down, and there goes R&D money from the government into universities, and there goes a whole new industry that maybe your country could become the leader in, but now you don't because you've got a strong religious anti-science lobby going on in your country that Germany doesn't, or something like that.
I think it was either Voltaire or Oscar Wilde that said, if you can get someone to believe absurdities, you can get them to commit atrocities. And that is...
Yeah. Climate change.
Well, even here on TikTok, our language has been changed. You can't say certain words. You have to say little code words so that way you don't get punished or banned for it, So it is creeping its way through all aspects of our society in some good ways, but not all good ways. I believe in free speech above all,
Yeah. Well, conspiracy theories are, I think, largely from what I've read, and I've got more studies to read on this, from people who are prone to explanation, wanting explanations and forcing explanations, and seeing patterns where there are none. Right? We all see patterns. And some people see patterns quicker than others. And if you tend to see, think of this for the audience, not so much for you guys. If you think of a picture that's been scrambled, okay, let's just take a series of them, 10%, 20%, 30%, all the way up to 90% scrambled. And at 50%, the average person can't figure it out. Can't see what's in the picture. Someone who sees patterns more easily is going to see what's in there more frequently than a person who doesn't see patterns as well. However, they're also going to see false things more frequently. That's the side effect. So those who are conspiracy theorists tend to see patterns, and there's also a thing about well, it's separate from Dunning-Kruger, because Dunning-Kruger is really about not being smart enough, right? And smart intelligence is it's kind of other things. It's like the ability to retain, the ability to do complex calculations or think at a more complex level. This propensity to see more or less patterns is a different factor. So you can have a high intelligence and still see patterns too much, and what you end up with is a very highly rationalized conspiracy theorist, right? Who thinks they see something, and they will build this very elaborate structure around it, and they're very good because they're very smart. And then you can go to the other range, because like I say, these things are separate, and you can have a dumb person essentially, and they see the patterns, and they don't become conspiracy theorists because they can't come up with the explanation.
I think too that the promulgation of the internet, it has been either a tool that has been used wisely, but in many instances, the internet has become a platform for people who would not normally have a voice to reach thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. So these conspiracy theories that we would have laughed at 20, 30 years ago, all of a sudden gain traction, like flat Earth.
Yeah,
You know,
and it's
right,
okay.
right,
Yeah. Well, and that's what the internet does. Understand too that the internet is a puts that information out for other people to access. So somebody who disbelieves in evolution, I can't. I mean, I do. I tell them, you should follow the consensus of those most educated in that field, and they say, well, no, I've got all this stuff on the internet that tells me, that shows me that evolution is wrong, and they bring that up as it's gotten to the point where there's a volume of it that
right.
is sufficient to them to be believable, just by the sheer volume of it. It's fascinating to me that we have flat earthers in the 21st century. It's just, I, like I say, I think it's just the extreme of being able to, because I study belief and I study these personality factors, and you take the things that I had already said and you add the personality of not wanting to ever admit you're wrong, those types of things, doubling down. So I don't, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, like I say, I've got studies on it, and I haven't read them all, so I've got to pull those together because I love. Yeah, yeah. So there's only so much you can count with an anecdote. That's why I like the studies, because it gives me something to go by. Because there are clusters. There are clusters of these different factors. That's why religious people tend to be conspiracy more prone to be conspiratorial thinking, because there's a common root that leads to both. Religion doesn't lead to conspiracy, or either the other ways around, but it's that tendency to credulous belief. Mhm. Yeah, 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 yeah. And then who's the creationist who's from Australia? Is it
Ray Comfort.
is it Canham? Comfort's New Zealand, isn't he? Yeah. Oh, okay. Wow, it's been a long time. I've spoken to him
Don't
too,
forget about
so
Ray
thanks for
Comfort.
sending him over. It was quite an experience. But yeah, and now it's going back, right? Now it's spreading more in Australia, which is even sadder. No, what is?
See,
Oh
why,
well.
why couldn't you send us koala bears?
We'll
I'd
send
rather
some
have
of those.
koala
Send more
bears
of
than
those over here.
and
Yeah, send
hams.
more of those. We want koala bears and pandas. Good.
I've seen that. I've seen that.
Well, that's how the market ideas should work, right? Because the ones that, especially the ones that have been shown to be wrong, should get shouted down. Basically, I mean, yeah. I mean, so it's like they're asking us to invent the wheel again. We know what shape the wheel is, and just because your Bible says the wheel is square, now we resolved this issue a long time ago, so you don't get to bring it up again and get to call it, equal access to both opinions. So. Hmm. Well, I mean, there's about 150 years difference there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because pilgrims are about early 1600s, right? If I got it right. And then, of course, founders are about 1760 to 90 in that area. It was here. I don't know why. I mean, it came, but I don't know. Some historians think it's the Scotch Irish that has whatever that means in terms of that type of a personality and that subculture that have come over and populated, become the southern plantation owners. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I read there's a famous book about the Scotch Irish in America, and it was not a convincing argument. I didn't think. As far as I'm concerned, people are people, and there's going to be. But again, I mean, it seems to me that within any population of any size, you're going to have a mix of liberals and conservatives according to the personality factors, and religious and not religious. And it really seemed like a stretch to put it on the Scotch Irish, or like I say, for that matter, why would I put it on Germany either? So there's too much. There's too many factors to blame people for something like that. Cultural factors. Yeah, that's my experience with Catholicism. Is it's more inactive. They're not evangelistic. They kind of follow along without thinking about it too much. It's the way my mom was. You know. Hey, welcome. I don't think you can categorize them as it's such a diverse population. Is this Tom?
Yeah, how are you? Believe
Hey,
in reality. Yeah, how are you?
I'm Phil. People keep
Hey.
asking me, so I put it up here.
All right, Phil. That's a great name you get. It's like the apostle. Wonderful.
It means Philip means lover of horses in Latin. I have
Yeah.
no particular interest in horses, but I
All
lover of chocolate. Yeah, that's right. So what can I help you with? What's on your mind?
I've been seeing a lot of people, especially women, like fighting about whether or not science and religion can coexist, or you can try to use the scientific method to understand the Bible or some kind of other religious text. And that got me thinking a lot uh, in the chaos of it, kind of thing. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I've been trying to get my hands on the book. What's this? This is the book from The Language of God by Francis Collins. Yeah, you ever heard of that
Yeah,
guy?
yeah, I've read it. Yeah, yeah. Science, science and religion can coexist. They're different things, but where they conflict, they are not compatible. If the Bible says the Earth is 6,000 years old and science tells us it's 4.5 billion, the Bible is wrong. So people who say that the Bible is always right and science proves the Bible, that's incorrect. People who say they are separate magisteria and you should not judge one by the other, that's basically a rationalization. That's also incorrect because what that does is it gives either one sort of a pass, and particularly it gives like I had a discussion with a guy the other day who said faith is a valid thing to use in religion, but not in anywhere else in life. It's like, no, that's not right. So to say it's a separate magisteria is like gives you a reason to justify things that are not justifiable. So you got to be careful about that. So you can say that they're compatible when they say completely different things, when they talk about different, either subjective things, what this is good, this is bad, or this versus that. But when they conflict on something specific, we'd have to find an example of it. But no, they're not going to be compatible. Science says something. At least science that's at the theory level where we have strong evidence for something like the age of the Earth or how the universe, sequence of how the universe came from the Big Bang to our current planet, then the Bible's wrong. There is no firmament, with the dome and the stars.
Oh yeah,
and the sun and the moon inside of the same size. No, it's wrong. But it was a reasonable hypothesis way back then. They had no proof, and they were doing philosophy with what they had to work with, and that's what they came up with. It's as valid as some creation story from any other culture at that time. At some point, we figured out what actually was, and now you put that down as mythology or a creation story that didn't turn out to be correct. So it's going to depend on the subject, and if you're going to compare subjective things like what is good and what is bad, that's not a science thing, right? That's like comparing values.
Yeah.
Science.
Well, that depends on your view of what's called morality and things about integrity and things of this nature. Whether you think it's objective, or in this case, I like the traditional sense, where previously people thought of moral propositions as either absolute or it's relative to the culture, not this objective subjective dichotomy. I think that's a modern invention.
Okay.
If I remember, yeah, I think that's the idea. Yeah. But there's a spectrum of views when it comes to talking about moral propositions and like whether moral realism is true and all this other philosophical positions and whatnot.
Yeah, and that's something that there's no consensus on. I just had to verify that a couple of days ago. I looked it up, and it's like, because I have my position and this other guy had his position, and when I looked it up, there is no philosophical consensus, and this is a question that's been asked and discussed for thousands and thousands of years. So, but the point I was trying to make is that abstracts, and particularly things like a value, that is not a scientific thing. It takes a mind to determine value. It's like, what's the value of a painting, for example? There's nothing intrinsic in the painting itself that makes it more or less valuable. It's either the beholder on who will pay how much, whatever, for it. So, it's not a thing of science. We can't measure the value of a painting by putting scientific instruments on it, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. Hmm. Let's see. I think I've seen now they have this field, neuroaesthetics or something, right? They're trying to make it a science. They're trying to combine uh, how the brain operates in making an aesthetic picture, like a painting, sculpture, whatnot. And
Into
there has been,
making an aesthetic judgment.
they're look this up, neuroaesthetics or something. Or that's a new field of brain science or whatever. They're trying to synthesize our subjective experience with neurology and some kind of psychology and some weird stuff like that to try and make it a factual matter that there are paintings out there that are, in a sense.
I could see that. That makes sense, and because I would think that has some sort of evolutionary basis to it. It's just like, which faces are more aesthetically pleasing than the others, kind of a thing, right? And what information does that give you? It's like, so you would choose you would attempt to choose the more attractive one because that implies fitness, or having all your teeth, or versus no teeth. I'm getting a cramp. Sorry, go off cam for a second.
Okay, so yeah, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to seek objective truths through observation and experimentation to gain what humans like in a painting, basically, something like that.
That's pretty cool. That is interesting. So I guess, maybe we will find some more objective things to that. That is interesting. Which we'll probably use for marketing at some point. So who I just let in here? Craig, welcome.
Hey Phil, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm going to make you the last one for tonight, just because I've been going for a while. But take your time.
All right. You hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Cool. I just saw that you were discussing stuff without getting into adversarial.
I'm trying.
Kind of things, yeah. And I appreciate that kind of thing. So I thought I'd drop in and hang out for a bit.
What's on your mind?
You said in the background it says Atheist Answers. So I guess it's okay to ask you questions.
Definitely, sure.
On I know there's different kinds of atheists. You're an atheist, right? Yeah.
Okay. I'm an agnostic atheist.
Okay. Where are you on the scale of, are you a hard atheist? Do you make the claim that God doesn't exist?
No. I make the claim that, at least not when I'm talking to someone clear like you. I make the claim that there's insufficient reason and evidence to believe that a God exists, but we don't know at an absolute that he does not.
Okay. Do you believe in anything supernatural or paranormal?
No.
Okay. So you're a materialist, I would say?
Well, the same sentence kind of applies there. I don't believe there's sufficient logic or evidence to believe that it does. That does not mean it does not. It is possible that supernatural exists and we have no access to it.
Yeah. Have you ever had an experience that you questioned that? Whether it was supernatural or not?
Two, but one of them's not, I don't think it's very good. I had eyes looking at me kind of from the doorway kind of thing, but it was like when I was waking up or something, so I counted down as a waking dream.
Okay. How long ago was that?
Like 10 or something like that.
When you were 10. Okay. Yeah, I've asked people that question, and it's interesting that a lot of people have at least one account of something, and I'm surprised at how many people do actually. But it's interesting. There's a lot of talk of shadow figures and like, do you know much about like New Age spirituality?
I've known a lot of people who are into that, but I don't think it's anything. I don't think there's anything to it.
Yeah.
Either.
No, I just was wondering if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, I used to live in a city that had a fair amount of people that had all these, magic crystals and things like this. And
yeah, do you know any like Wiccans or people that call themselves pagans?
I do. I have a friend. I was in a an interfaith group for about a year and a half. I was the atheist in the group, and I brought a Wiccan in who had been a friend of mine because I did an interview with him once. I know I actually went to one of his. It was like a spring ceremony kind of thing. It was pretty cool.
Like a nature thing.
It was. It was a nature. Yeah, it was. Well, I don't know. There were spells, and there was like a goat head, and.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was pretty.
That sounds cool. Different than I was thinking. It was just like a.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, no, it wasn't more like of a major pagan. They believed in like the goddess of spring and this type of thing, which is similar to
like
some of the pagan type thing. But yeah, I didn't get more into it than that. He's just sort of a distant friend. But
yeah, what do you think of those people?
I think their beliefs are incorrect, but some of the nicest people you'll ever meet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How is like how did you find them that they were nice? Like how would you describe that?
Very accepting of others, very concerned for others. At one point it was like they did this thing where we were standing in a circle, and it was like
you're passing the goat head around.
No, it just sat on the table.
Oh.
It was like a New Year's Eve thing. We were just sort of like giving our wishes for the year or something like that.
Okay.
And everybody said something I thought very nice, and it came to me, and I said that I hoped for us to all seek what is true or something like that. And they were oh, that's nice,
And were they directing it anywhere in particular? Like were they praying?
I don't remember if they were. I think the whole ceremony was directed at the spring goddess.
Okay.
But I'm not exactly sure. I don't know. Maybe it goes to I don't know if they follow a particular, deity type thing or whatever. That might be too strong a word, because I think it's more. I want to say polytheistic, but I don't know if you would call it goddesses, gods. So, but there's more than one. So yeah. It's poly something.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not that familiar with them. I know I've interacted with a lot of atheists and
yeah. It was
people
fascinating.
Who are Wiccans and a lot of New Agers.
Yeah.
A lot of New Agers.
It was fascinating because when I was with that group, we went to different churches,
mm-hmm.
and not everything's a church, right? Whatever they call it, whatever religion, just
their form of a church.
Yeah, their form of worship ceremony or whatever it was, and we went to all these different ones. And to me, it was just like I look at it as like cultural anthropology.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, see what it is. I'm not there to challenge, and I'm just there to observe and be kind. And it's just like, it's interesting. I mean, because I don't know. It's anytime you get yourself into another culture, you're learning something new. You learn tolerance of others, if nothing else. So.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
It's really nice to see them be intolerant of others. Some of them are more tolerant than others.
Right. Oops. I'm getting beeped here.
Your toast is ready.
Yes, and my fire alarm needs a new battery. What was I going to say? Oh, I know what I was going to ask. The people who these were people who call themselves pagans. Is that accurate?
Wiccan.
Oh, okay. And they consider that a religion. I think Wiccan is a religion, right?
I guess. I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Or I think it's Wicca is the religion, and Wiccan is the broader term. Whatever. I think the religion.
I think it's the other
Wicca.
way around.
Okay, that's the way I understood, but that's fine.
The people who were at this place that churches or whatever in quotes.
Somebody's house, actually. But yeah, go ahead.
Do they ever do anything that approaches what you describe as supernatural, or do they claim to do that?
I consider that supernatural. I mean, they were praying to a goddess. I would think that I would consider that a supernatural. As far as I know, they
nothing you could see, though, right?
Well, you can see a goat head pretty clearly.
No, I know, but it wasn't levitating. I assume.
Right. It was about 7 years ago, so I'm trying to remember. Must
have been a weird experience. Was that the first time you were around that kind of environment?
It's. I used to go to a Wiccan shop in Pasadena years back. Because it was like I thought it was cool because I used to play D&D back then, and just the decor of the stuff was just similar, right? So I thought it was really cool. But interesting though, because they had spell books in there too, and at that point I wasn't a straight up atheist, and I was just like, I should get a spell book, and maybe I can find some cool spells to play in my D&D game. And it was just like, but I don't know if they really have an effect, so I better not take the chance. Now I would just go and buy the damn thing. But yeah, this group, I believe they do spell work. I'm quite confident that none of them do anything beyond a placebo effect, but so I have no fear of those things at this point in my life.
Yeah. Would you
I walk under ladders and things like that? So
yeah, but what about stuff like I get like a Ouija board or something? Would you participate in that if somebody pulled it out at a party and turned the lights down
as a party game? But no, I don't believe there's anything to it. I would do it as a game.
You would try it?
I would do it as I've done it when I was younger, but I would do it. But yeah, no, I've never believed there was anything to that.
Right. Have you ever gone to a like a fortune teller or medium or something like that? Psychic?
Do you know how much they charge?
I have no idea. I've never been to one.
I haven't. I mean, I've been to like Ren fairs and stuff, Renaissance fairs, they do that in the booth. And again, that city that I used to live in that had a lot of woo people, there was a store that had spell books and books about magic and books about pagan gods and crystals and candles and incense, and it was all very pretty. Because again, I like D&D and I like medieval themed stuff, just like I like medieval movies. So it was kind of cool looking. But no, I don't believe any. I don't believe any of it's. I don't believe anything supernatural. So
yeah. Well, sometimes people will say that, but they also say. No, I wouldn't mess with a Ouija board, and then I say why, and they say just in case or whatever. So
yeah, and that's the position I was with the witch's store, 30 years ago. But no, I'm past that now.
Did you ever get into it yourself, like where you were actually reading stuff about it and like educating yourself about?
Not really. I mean, when honestly, when I read the Bible, That's really what locked in atheism for me. And I wasn't expecting it because I wasn't trying to do it. But when the God belief went away, everything supernatural went away at the same time for me. It's just like, oh, yeah.
Okay.
All of that. And then I got into studying how people come to different beliefs of anything, and it all sort of falls in place. It's like, oh yeah, people believe odd things for this or that reason, and
Okay. Yep. I'm a Christian myself, but
yeah.
I
Have you
acknowledge
ever gotten into that stuff or looked into it, or would you avoid it just in case, or
I would never do Ouija board or go to a psychic
because
they're, in my worldview, they are contacting spirits.
you think that's demonic?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that for people like psychics, I think that there are things, they call them familiar spirits. You familiar with that term?
Familiar, sure, yeah.
But they they're around and they observe people, and they can, through the medium, they can convince you that they're a loved one or something where you'd like want very much for that to be the case, and they use that kind of trickery to get in.
Have you ever seen anybody or watched any videos on people doing cold readings?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's basically a kind of magic trick. It's kind of like it's a convincing of somebody that something's going on based on typically reading cues and their reactions. Or sometimes there's more deceit to it than that, like getting some information from family members beforehand. But why do you think these things are demon based as opposed to just nothing, like not real, like psychics would just be like someone making stuff up?
Well, I do believe in the supernatural, and I think there's a supernatural realm. I think that you probably heard this, that some people have theories that aliens are actually demons, and they're not extraterrestrial, but they're interdimensional.
Why would they be that? I haven't heard that, but that's another one to throw into the pile, I guess. That's interesting. I wouldn't think there'd be any reason for that at all. I mean, because to me, I would think that aliens would just be another biology that evolved. I don't see why it would have to be likely a supernatural thing as opposed to just, in our life, your lifetime.
I might be older than you.
Okay, well, somewhere near, and I might be wrong. We may already have done it. There should be evidence of bacterial life off of planet Earth, and to me, it makes perfect sense. I mean, we've already found amino acids all over the place on comets, on asteroids, and other planets.
Yeah, no life though.
Well, like I say, we'll probably find single cellular life. You'd expect that. I think we're probably going to find it on one of Jupiter's moons sooner rather than later. But that may be 50 years from now once we get around to being able to afford that and stuff.
Yeah.
So we are where we are right now. So, but yeah, advanced life. Well, it depends on what you call advanced life. I mean, there's single cell, there's multi-cell, then there's there's like worms, and then there's small animals, and then there's animals that get to our level, which is to the point where we have self-awareness and intention and some ability to reason and be aware of abstract thoughts, abstract concepts, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have evidence of that at this point.
How do you, in your worldview, how do you see life coming from non-life?
Oh,
is it just I don't know, or do you believe in abiogenesis?
Yeah, I believe in abiogenesis. That seems real obvious to me at this point. There's a lot of research going on in abiogenesis. They don't have the knowledge yet of how we got from fully inorganic to organic, but they've got a lot of pieces of the puzzle. It really just comes down to basic chemistry, right? Like a carbon atom, for example, will bond in 4 different ways, and then having an environment sufficient to have other atoms that would generate eventually something that's self-replicating. They've already generated self-replicating RNA of like 20. Was it nucleotides? I can't remember. Or amino acids. I can't remember now. Yeah,
that's not something I'm familiar with.
Yeah, I think we're well on the way. It's going to be a while because we've also found certain ways that it doesn't work well, right? As an example, if you make a chain of amino acids that's however long it is, the longer it gets, the more prone it gets to being oxidized and broken up and interrupted by other things. So you have to have a way to stabilize it in. So we're just getting like pieces of the puzzle right now. I don't think it's something we'll figure out for probably another 300 years. Kind of my guess. But the idea that it can't happen is, I think it's pretty much gone in terms of being objectively realistic.
I think that the evidence for it is, it's still just a hypothesis.
Yes, but it's got enough to, because I mean, historically, obviously, you've got the creator hypothesis, right? Because we've had that since probably written history, right? So 6000 BC, we've had the creator hypothesis for as long as we've known written history. Sure. So culturally, that's very strong with us, and there's some intuitiveness to it. So there's that. But like I say, I think it was 100 years ago or so, when they first were able to generate amino acids from base chemicals like nitrogen and carbon and oxygen and stuff. And that was
the Miller-Urey experiment.
The Miller-Urey, and that's been done over and over and over since then, many, many different ways. And we've also found amino acids, like I say, all over the place, in space, on Earth, on asteroids, in comets. So that just seems to be the nature of, or a byproduct of the physics of the atoms themselves. If they come together close enough, they will combine in these ways, and these are stable structures. Now, to get to more complex life, especially when you look at the complexity of the cell, that's we're not there yet, and that's why there is no transition from no cell to cell. It's going to be like this million-step thing. So we start to understand protocells. Like, for example, we know that fatty acids, for example, which are the dominant makeup of a cell membrane, they form automatically by electrostatic charges. They form into little bubbles with the hydrophobic side facing out and the hydrophilic side facing in. I think it is, unless I have that backwards. So that seems to be how the cell structure comes to be the base. Again, these are the proto steps. So at whatever point you don't really call it. I don't know when you would call it life. I think when we call something living, essentially when it can reproduce and when it can take in food or just energy, and then it can put out waste products. That's a simplistic version of it. So that's going to come way before what we know to be the cell these days, with Golgi apparatus and mitochondria and all those other 20 different things that we see in a cell. So,
Oh, there's a ton. Do you know a guy named Dr. James Tour?
I've heard the name, but I don't remember. So, refresh me. I may not know this.
He's very intelligent. He's got a lot of patents, and he's got a lot of degrees, and he's really, really smart. But he's in that field, and he's constantly saying that we're nowhere near figuring out how life started.
I would agree with that.
That
I would agree with that.
But he also said that as time goes on, they're learning more about the cell, so it makes it more and more stuff that they don't understand. You know what I mean? So it's not like they're moving closer to it. It's like they're finding out that they're further away.
Well, first off, we have to go on the consensus, not of one guy's opinion. So, for what that's worth. But like I said, it's the proto cells. It's the proto steps. It takes millions or trillions of steps to get from A to B, right? Or A to Z, I should say. So it's an argument that he makes. I don't think it'll hold up over a long time. But like I said, I think we're way off, hundreds of years at least.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe science will do better with some of the technology that's starting to come out. So I'm not concerned about it. It just seems like we're heading there. I mean, the origin of life research is pretty fascinating stuff. If you've looked at some of the read any books on it or looked at some of the studies on it, it makes sense. And like you said, that we're not there, but I don't think you can any longer say that it can't happen that way. So I don't just overstate it because we know what we know. So yeah, who is that? Wants to jump in?
Gren, I just want to say something.
Yeah.
People were mentioning James Randi in the chat. In the 1970s, he came to Australia, and there was a clairvoyant who'd been doing the late night television shows called Doris Stokes. And anyway, he came on and he did his mentalism bit and had everybody wowed and wooed. And then he went, aha, I'm a magician. It's all just a big trick. I've tricked you all. Anyway, I remember watching that because I was a skeptic at the time. Didn't even know the word skeptic, but I didn't believe any of that stuff. And I remember being so excited, and I went to school the next day because they'd all been going on and on about this Doris Stokes. And I went to school thinking they would have all seen it and all have woken up. And I said, did you see that, James Randi? And they all looked at me and go, oh, wasn't he just an asshole?
We wanted to believe. We liked.
And I just, it was never going to be easy being a skeptic in this world.
Yeah. I mean, you tell people they can talk to their grandmother, and it's a hard thing to give up when you really want it to be true.
Yeah, my little heart was broken. Anyway, I'm going to leave you on that one, Phil. Thanks for having a chat with me today.
Thank you, Green Angle. Follow if you haven't so far, please.
I have.
I appreciate you. Come back again sometime. So, Craig, any other questions? Anything else you want to chat about tonight?
Sure. Do you believe that time, space, and matter had a beginning?
Well, I have to accept the consensus of cosmologists because they're the ones who are educated in this field. So I don't have the education to really have a strong opinion. So let me think. We don't know what happened before Planck time, which is like 1 to the minus 24 seconds. So we don't know if there was something eternal before that, or if we were just like a pop off of another multiverse bubble kind of thing, or a quantum effect or something. We don't know. There's lots of hypotheses, but yeah, we just don't know yet. and we may never know. I'm kind of, it's kind of cool and shocking that we know as much as we do. I mean, this is only the 21st century. Seriously, we didn't know what oxygen was before like 1850. So it really kind of fascinates me that we know a lot, and yet think of how much more will know in 1,000 years. We are still. I think of us as like young teens or something, as knowledgeable humans. So,
like our current society or current age.
Just the level of knowledge that we have. I mean, we used to be so completely ignorant, right? We didn't know about bacteria. We thought diseases were caused by demons, and we used to bleed people, right, to treat fevers. And these were all again like hypotheses of the time, and they were doing the best they can with what they had, and they made some guesses and they made some assumptions, and they did the best they can. And eventually we found out that, bacteria exists, and we can use anesthetics to help mothers survive births and not get infected, and et cetera, et cetera. And now we can build machines based on the physics that we've learned in the last 150 years, and we can go to friggin' Mars. We've got a Voyager spacecraft that's beyond the orbit of Pluto and still sending back information. We've learned an awful lot, and yet we've only learned, like I say, about oxygen since like 1850. It's not even 200 years. So there's so much more we're gonna learn.
Yeah, but respectfully, that's in the future, and it's not something you can base an argument on.
Well, you can, because, and I hear what you're saying. You can't go too strong on it. But there's a pattern of elaboration. Have you ever read a book on sort of like the sequence of discoveries and knowledge over time in science?
No.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. That's why I bring up the 1850s all the time as kind of a transitional time, because we learned evolution, the origin of evolution. We learned the geology was only in the 1860. Chemistry, we didn't know what oxygen was. We didn't know what caused fire to burn. And then we learned electricity and magnetism. It was Maxwell in 1870 or something. And then Einstein, of course, and then the physicists from 1910 to 1925. And all of that's been elaborated on significantly in the last some years from evolution and paleontology and physics. Our standard model of particle physics we've made a dozen times over. We've predicted particles and then discovered them 30 years later or so.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been this steady rate. Well, not rate, but steady, only one direction where we figure stuff out that we didn't know at all what it was, or we had wrong explanations for, and now we know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And if we didn't understand evolution, we would be all dead of antibiotic, or not all of us, but we'd be a much smaller population because we understand that how bacteria evolve from resistance to current drugs and stuff, and that's a big problem for us.
Yeah, and with viruses.
Viruses are an interesting example, because the first antibiotics were like the sulfa drugs that were invented right before, or discovered right before World War II, World War I, right? Sulfas were the first antibiotics, and then penicillin was used after that. So it's just for antivirals, we're almost at the very beginning, like we were with antibacterials back then. There's a few antiviral products. I'm a retired pharmacist, so there's a few antiviral products on the shelf, but there's not that many of them. And viruses mutate so quickly that we kind of can't make antidotes to them or antivirals to them because they keep changing. That's why our flu shot every year and now the COVID shot has to be changed every year.
Yeah.
Because there's always new strains. So it's just they're doing this like 9 month ahead projection of what's going to be what they think is going to be the dominant strain according to studying the epidemiology that they have and the patterns of disease, and they usually will put the top 3 or 4 strains into the vaccine for that 1 year.
Right.
So viruses are tough. They change really quickly.
Seeing that what your occupation was, did you have any hesitation about getting the jab?
No.
You're not even since then. You're not, even though they've come out with a lot of. I'm not going to go into this in depth.
There's a lot of misinformation out there, but no, I have no problem at all with it. And because the COVID vaccine was developed. It was developed quicker than we've ever done because it was such a high. So many people were dying, right? It was a high risk illness that we didn't know what the severity is. I mean, it could have been like an Ebola level thing, which kills like 40% of people. I think it's 40 or 60 or 80 or it's really high. And we didn't know what it was at first, right? So it was just like do everything we can, and that's when obviously everybody just stayed home because it's just like, please at least protect yourselves at that point. And then the studies they did about like 3 or 4 times the normal length, because normally we would take like a year for each of those steps, and we did it in like 15 months or something. So we took a few more risks, but it was worth it. And it turned out to be correct, turned out to be valid, perfectly valid. So in a way, we were a little bit lucky because, but we got really good. Well, we did the best we could at the time, like anybody ever did. I mean, viruses are RNA based as opposed to DNA based, and we didn't have that much experience with viruses, right? Because, like I say, why don't we have a vaccine for the cold? Because it mutates so quickly. And this is basically a cold that causes more severe disease. So we did the best we can, and it turned out to be damn good. So, and I feel really bad because the people that are the most prone to distrust and disbelief, or to distrust, the conspiracy theorists, in terms of personality factors, are the ones that didn't get the virus. And I don't know if you remember, but some of the earliest challenges or people who resisted getting the vaccine, or people who didn't want to. Remember the churches that didn't want to be shut down? They didn't want to be told they were shut down. They had to shut down. They didn't want to close their doors. They wanted to decide for themselves.
Yep.
And then there was about a month period there where we got story after story after story about pastors getting infected and dying, and then these became super spreader events. And then I was so happy when I read the first story of I think it was Catholic. Yeah, it was Catholic because they were doing communion. That the priest was doing the communion outside, and people were driving up to it. Masks on. Cool. I was like, "Thank you. You're killing your own people." So. And then, yeah, that was great. And at the peak of because I was freaked out at the time, so I'm a little bit of a worrier, even with the pharmaceutical knowledge. At the peak time of the pandemic, Republicans were dying 3-1 over Democrats. That was the demographic that was more fearful of getting the shot and didn't like being told what to do. the conservatives, and it's like literally it was 3 point something to 1. And I remember watching the charts. It's like, people, you're killing your own. You know, it's one thing
I'm not
to get the
familiar with
disease
that.
and then pass. Oh yeah, go back and look it up.
I'm in
And
Canada, so
yeah, it was scary, and it's like you think you're doing the right thing, and you're not. I remember going to a business, and I had my mask on at the time. The guy wasn't. I wanted to get something repaired. The guy didn't have a mask on. Didn't think it was right. Didn't want to be told what to do. These teenagers came in to get some product. There was like 3 or 4 of them. They were they're about 20, and he was advocating to them to go out and have a COVID party and infect each other to get the immunity. It's like,
yeah,
are
he used to
you
do that with
nuts?
chickenpox.
They did. But chickenpox didn't kill people, and we didn't know at that point in the ailment how serious this was. Have you ever? And granted, it was more toxic. It was more toxic to older people than younger. But that was really dumb. That was really that was scary. You ever heard of? You familiar with the physics girl? She's on YouTube.
No.
She's a physics professor, and she started a YouTube channel. She's young. She's like 25 or so, or she was, and she was building a YouTube channel. I think she was getting like real popular. She got like over 1 million or something, and then she got COVID, and she's got long COVID now, and she's been bedridden for like a year and a half. She's like 27 or something now. It's just awful.
And she didn't get an injection?
I'm sure she did, actually.
Okay.
So there's obviously other factors. You know, why would she get long COVID and the next person wouldn't? So there's going to be individual immune system factors that go into it too.
Sure.
Anyways, we're going all over the place. So.
I had a couple questions, but if you want to get going, that's fine.
Well, go ahead. I'm still awake. I've got another half inch of water here. Go ahead.
Did you, when you were young, did you believe in God at that time?
That's a good question.
Like in a Christian home or something?
I honestly don't know. I was raised Catholic, and we went to the church. We went to church. I had first communion. I was baptized. I had confirmation. I practiced it because that's what my family did. I would guess that I probably believed. I don't really honestly remember for sure. But I think it's reasonable to think that I probably did believe until I started noticing problems in the sermons that it just seemed like all sort of fanciful stories, and that's what started my deconstruction, if you will.
How old were you at that time?
16, 17, somewhere in there.
Yeah,
I stopped
the
going
age,
to church.
the upper teens and early 20s are the generally when people.
Yeah, I was in high school.
Stray away from the faith. Yep.
I was in high school, and it wasn't like one of those going off to college, meeting other types of people things. I was still in high school, and I just told my parents I was not going to go anymore. I honestly, I thought I didn't understand it. I thought I was missing something because everybody else seems to be getting it, and I'm not getting it. But I just decided to stop going, and I figured let some time pass, and I'll come back to it later and see if it makes any more sense. Yeah. And I did. I came back to it, and it's just like, no, it's still the same. It's fanciful stories. Life and time went by, and then I eventually read the Bible end to end, because you don't read the Bible as a Catholic, right? You just go to church, you know.
Yeah. I heard that.
I found, very casual. Really. My mom never read the Bible, and she was devout. So I finally read the Bible, and that's what convinced me that I was an atheist, because it seemed it was clearly a book written in a certain culture about people who believe, but not of a deity. The supernatural stuff none of it was believable or justifiable. So,
Well, you know my opinion, but I'm not here to argue with you.
that's okay. I mean, if we had more time, I'd say let's get into something more specific, and because I am just as curious. I'm kind of eternally curious to believers as to why they think this or that is believable. So
yeah, I similar to you. I walked away from Christianity when I was 19, and
why?
I stayed away for 30 years.
Why did you walk away?
I realized that I didn't have my own reasons for my beliefs, that I just grew up that way and I didn't really question it. And then I started thinking things like, well, what if I was born in a different family or somewhere else, different part of the world, things like that. That's a common question. And so I probably wasn't interested in it either because, like I was on my own out, living on my own.
So you didn't go to disbelief. You just stopped practicing. Or did
I
you?
became agnostic. I just didn't know.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. That makes sense.
And I avoided it for 30 years. And it wasn't until an atheist friend of mine started. He was like part of the. Have you been following along on online for a while as far as like worldview discussions and stuff?
Yeah, I've been in this since post 9/11. Essentially, that's when Sam Harris. It's what triggered Sam Harris to start writing his books and stuff like that. So yeah, I've been doing this since about 2005.
So you started off with the new atheist trend or movement or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I mean, and like I say, that was triggered from 9/11. Although Dawkins' books go earlier than that, and that's science based. But yeah, 9/11 caused a lot of people to try to want to understand what would motivate that belief set. And it got it woke up a lot of people to think about it, investigate it. And that's when Dawkins had already written the evolution piece of it. And I don't know exactly what Hitchens obviously was about the same era. But for a lot of people, I think Sam Harris's early book was probably the start of what I guess we'll call it a trend. But even the atheist community of Austin goes back before that. They've been going on for 30 years now, I think.
Yeah, there was a time where four of them were kind of branding themselves as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse or something like that. Or 4 horsemen of atheism or something.
I don't know where that name came from. I don't know if that came from. I wouldn't think it would come from them. I would think it's probably a name assigned to them. Just like the Big Net Bang was sort of that was a name that was a mocking name of that hypothesis at the time. I honestly don't know where that name came from.
Yeah.
I don't think I can almost guarantee it didn't come from them.
It was probably 4 horsemen of atheism or something like that. I know that it was something along those lines, but that was something that they referenced themselves sometimes. But that was a big push at that point. It was started off with because of 9/11 and the Islam connection to that, but it quickly turned against Canadians, Christians.
Poor Canadians. Hey, my dad was a Canadian.
Yeah, nice. That's good for you. Hey?
No, I don't have. We looked into that. He was a dual citizen, but it doesn't go down a generation anymore. It used to, but not anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm just me here in the U.S.
No, I'm
okay. So 4 horsemen, and then you had an atheist friend.
Oh yes, thank you. He was sending me links and stuff to atheist podcasts, and videos on YouTube. There was a lot of atheist versus theist debates, and there was a lot of stuff going on at that time. He was also involved with he was signed up for this discussion forum, and it was like a spirituality and religion discussion forum, and there was a lot of like anti-Christian sentiment within that group, and he was like trying to encourage me to get involved with this stuff, and so I signed up as an atheist or as a agnostic.
Yeah.
And, so I was like just in the middle, and everybody wanted me to be on their side, and it was a very interesting experience. I ended up hearing all the arguments for and against, and you sort of like realize that at a certain point, like, I have now heard them all. That's not new. That's not new. That's not new.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, through that I developed a genuine interest to know the truth. Like when I would watch the debates and stuff, like that's like they would always end off like it would be nebulous as far as like who won or what truth we've gotten from it.
I don't like debates. Yeah, that's part of the problem. So much gets thrown out and so little gets responded to. But that's what they did back then. You don't see as much of it now, but yeah.
No, not as much now, no. But I watched one of the ones that I really thought was good was Richard Dawkins and John Lennox at the Science Museum or History Museum or something like that.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah. I remember when I was watching that video that it like struck me like that I was being convinced. It was like, wait a minute, this might be real. I remember the moment when I was watching it happened.
Well,
so John Lennox has some influence for me.
Yeah, you're not alone. And I remember, I don't remember watching it, but I knew I did watch that one. And I read his book because Dawkins had written The God Delusion, and then Lennox wrote The Dawkins Delusion, right? And I've read both of those, of course. Yeah, I did not find Lennox's stuff convincing, and another day we'll have maybe a little back and forth on some aspect of it or something.
Yeah, sure.
But, yeah, they're both smart guys. Lennox is a mathematician, I believe, right?
I think he's from Oxford with C.S. Lewis, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, and he's one of those. Correct me if I'm wrong, that I think he's one of those that uses that I don't have enough faith to disbelieve, right? I think he's one of those.
Not that I'm aware of, but maybe you could be right.
And I might have that wrong then. But yeah, he's obviously a strong theist, and he's a smart guy. So, but I think
he's an OG theologist, or
an OG, original generation,
original gangster.
Oh, well, essentially the same thing. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how far that goes back. I mean, do we want to call C.S. Lewis an OG, or do we have to go all the way back to Paul? So I think Paul was the OG. So.
Well, I'm just making my own decisions on that.
Yeah, let's do this again. Be kind to each other. Take care of your family. Take care of everybody. Love your pets. Take care. Good night.